My feet are touching them.
We started recording.
All right. Call to order the October 18th meeting of the HALRB 2023. Please call the roll.
Sure. Mr. John Aiken,
Here.
Mr. Amari Davis,
Here.
Robert Dudka is excused, Andrew Fackler,
Here.
Alex Foster, Carmela Ham, Ray Hanley,
Here.
Gerald Laporte,
Here.
Jim Lawrence,
Here.
Rebecca Meyer,
Here.
Katie Myers,
Here.
Mark Turnbull, Andrew Winchell,
Here.
and Dick Woodruff.
Here.
We indeed have a quorum.
Wow.
In person, I might add.
Wow. Thanks everybody for coming out. Before we get down with the business of today, I just want to let our newest member, Andrew Fackler, introduce himself and say a few words. Take it away, Andrew.
Alrighty, my name is Andrew Fackler. I moved to Arlington coming up on 2 years ago now from the Chicago suburbs. I got my master's in urban planning from Iowa State University, graduating in April 2020, so right into the beginning of the pandemic. But I was lucky enough to get a position with my neighboring county at the time as a zoning coordinator. And I was also one of the staff liaisons to their historic preservation commission. So I sort of have a general idea of how this works, luckily. And then about a year later, I got a position as an architectural historian with the Department of State, which brought me here. And that's what I'm currently doing. But between my education and personal interests, I just wanted to get more involved in my newfound community, and I felt like this was a good way to do that. So here I am.
Welcome.
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. That will just go through the explanation of tonight's hearing. Welcome again to this meeting. So again, effective September 1st, 2022, new state legislation now requires certain county approved commissions from the HLRB to have in-person quorum to conduct their business. HLRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. Members of the board and members of the public joining us this evening, please listen to this again. Today's meeting is streamed on the county's website via Microsoft Teams link. There's also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. If board members, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity tonight's meeting, please reconnect by phone. Please keep your device muted and your video turned off if you're to recall them to speak. Public speakers not sponsoring items on the agenda must pre-register to speak at tonight's hearing. And for speakers in the room, there are slips available in the front of the room for you to take and do so. I'll call you to speak after presentation of the agenda item. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance only. It should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about the agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. All voting will be done by call of the roll. Lastly, there's a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county's website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to freedom of information requirements. And with that, we can review and approve the August and September minutes. I guess the first will be the August minutes. Is there any questions or comments about the minutes? So, hearing none, can I have a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Okay, Mr. Aiken,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Fackler,
Abstain.
Ms. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Hanley,
I can't remember if I was at that meeting. I think yes. I was not at the last one. No.
okay. Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Say.
That passes.
Now we'll review and approve the September minutes. Are there any questions about September minutes? Any questions or comments about those minutes? Hearing none, can we motion to approve the minutes? September?
Make a motion to approve the September 2023 members.
Second that.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Aiken,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Thackler,
Abstain.
Ms. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Hanley,
Abstain.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Abstain.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
and Mr. Woodruff.
Stay.
For the record, we are all caught up in minutes.
Oh, wow.
It's a village, but we got it done.
I think I misheard the August one. I was out of town, so can I change that to abstain?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now we're all caught up.
Now we're all, okay, now we're all.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, and with that, do the first item, which is informational item for the Barcroft Apartment Section 4 renovation.
You all can squeeze on in,
Full house.
and I have some room here. I think we want to shift. Okay. So we have the applicants here. I think everybody's familiar with most everybody, but I'm going to just go ahead and jump into my staff report just to explain what's going on. So this is the Barcroft Apartments. Some of you may remember this is identified in the Columbia Pikes Neighborhood Area Plan, also known as the Form-Based Code. Barcroft is one of 3 multifamily residential areas identified as a conservation area in the Form-Based Code. The Gerald Lynch project team most recently worked with the county on a pilot renovation program focused on Section 3 in Barcroft Apartments, and the HLRB reviewed that project in July 2023 at their public hearing. And this phase that they're working on is occurring in Section 4 of the complex, specifically buildings 32, 33, and 34. And this new phase will involve the project team applying for affordable housing tax credit financing from Virginia Housing. And the project team presented to the HLRB at the September meeting. Majority of this discussion centered around 2 topics. The ramp guardrail options proposed at the rear of building 33, and if the HLRB recommended a modern design canopy with tiebacks to or to a traditional canopy design that was previously approved in Section 3. And we did not have them come to the design review committee because we felt that there was not really need to kind of go into that much detail. Also, because it's form-based code, we are not approving anything. We're not making a motion. This is part of us being a part of the review process. That information from this meeting will be captured in the use permit report that staff will be providing to the county board, who will then take that into consideration. If this ends up being more that how you want to inform the county board, there's always being able to submit a letter, which usually is kind of the way that we go about it. Also, anytime this form-based code, you come 2 times. So this is the 2nd time that the project team is here. So I'm just going to go into my general recommendations for the things that have changed, or the things that we are hoping would be the main part of the discussion tonight with the HLRB. So different from the September submission is concerning access to the new ADA compliant units that are being proposed in building 33. The project team made adjustments by working with the existing grade and pathways to reduce the walkway slopes, and this basically eliminated the need for the guardrails and railings. We had a really good discussion about that in September. I think we came with some good ideas and wanted to see, since they had to come a 2nd time, let's get more discussion if we had more people attend. My gosh, you guys really came. But so the other thing is, again, just concerning the canopy designs. Staff, though, has kind of come up with our recommendation. Our recommendation, though there was a really good discussion in the September meeting about when you could work with the traditional design of the canopy versus a modern design, staff really feels that we prefer to stick with the traditional design that was approved during the Section 3 renovation project. we feel that because we're kind of getting these projects separately and not in a full comprehensive approach, that causes some challenges, and we don't want there to be, we just don't want it to look weird. We'd like it to kind of stay consistent, as well as have the applicant know exactly what's going to be probably considered well by the HLRB whenever they come back here for review. So that's one of the reasons why we preferred the more traditional design. And that's really my very summarized staff report. So I will let you all take it away. Lauren, please go ahead and introduce yourself and everybody again, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a very brief presentation. Greg, you can bring it up online. You all see me almost every month, but for the record, for the benefit of new members, I'm Lauren Riley with Walsh Colucci. We represent the applicant team, Jared Lynch, with regard to these projects here. And then in the room with me tonight, we have Sarah Bonish with Traceries and David Hildy with Jared Lynch.
We start seeing me every other
Yes,
month.
right?
I'm usually online, but wanted to come in person.
I know.
So.
And then online, we've got other folks on our team, folks from Posture Hairsign Architecture, as well as like engineering, and Greg Ward is here too with Jared Lynch. And Lauren gave you a little bit of background about our previous use permit history, where we are in the process now, but I'll just recap. You all recall the Section 3 renovation phase this past summer, which was approved in July. Coming back now to you with the second renovation phase, which is going to be in a part of Section 4 of Barcroft. We filed those applications a few months ago. We met with the DRC. We met with you all last month in September. This will be our second meeting, which will fulfill that form-based code requirement that we meet with HALRB twice to get your feedback on this project's compliance with those conservation area standards. And then after tonight, we anticipate heading to the form-based code advisory working group next month in November, and then public hearings before the Planning Commission and the County Board later this year in December. Next slide. And I'll kind of run through some of these overview slides for the benefit of those who were not able to attend last month's meeting. This here is just an image to kind of reorient you to where we are in the Barcroft apartment complex. The area outlined in red there are those three buildings Lauren mentioned, 33, 34, and 32, 33, and 34. To the right there, and then to the left, that area in gray, that was those were the 5 buildings that were subject to that first renovation phase project. Next slide. And then again, an aerial just to show you where these 3 buildings are in relation to the larger Barcroft apartment complex. We're kind of the end of what we call the tail there south of George Mason Drive. Next slide. And then just to recap the overall scope of the renovations for this phase, they're very similar to what you saw last summer with the phase 1 in section 3. I mean, generally we're cleaning the brick, we're replacing the roofs, we're replacing those exterior fixtures with in-kind fixtures, repairing other items where needed. And then you'll also see where these numbers 3 and 4 are. Here, we're upgrading those older heating and air systems for the benefit of the residents of Barcroft. So we'll be taking out those old PTAC units and heating and boiler units and replacing them with more modern equipment. That will involve removing these penetrations at the front of the building and filling with brick to match existing. And here, unlike with section 3, we have some buildings that are painted. And so where the brick has been painted, the infill brick will also be painted to match the existing. Next slide. And then we've got another set of renovations that in site improvements that require modifications of those conservation area standards. Again, very similar to what you saw in section 3. So associated with the removal and introduction of new, more modern HVAC equipment, we require new penetrations only to the rear of the buildings for ventilation. And then also here, as Lauren mentioned, one main difference from the past phases, this one is the conversion of ground floor units to type A accessible units. So in order to make those 4 units, which you'll see in a moment where those are located, we have to create doors on the rear, new openings for those doors on the rear of building 33. So we'll need new penetrations there, as well as the introduction of fiberglass doors for those 4 units in the back. And then again, as you saw with the first phase, we'll be replacing those basement windows with vinyl to match existing. And then there's another tranche of modifications that we need to comply with VHDA housing, which is the canopies on all residential entrances and the vinyl or aluminum cladding for the exterior wood trim. For those 2 items, we will be requesting a waiver from Virginia Housing. Although we've recently submitted our waiver request and application for that phase 1, we've yet to hear back from Virginia Housing about how receptive they were to that waiver request. So for now, we're keeping those items in this phase 2 use permit scope as well. Next slide. All right. And here's the site plan for the specifically for the building 33 area where most of these changes are occurring. As Lauren mentioned, unfortunately, we took away the really meaty discussion of the railings and the design there. I know it's so nice to have more of you here for a more robust discussion, but I think the changes that we've made will ultimately be better for the new residents. We think make it easier for them to get in and out of those accessible units in the back. So what you're seeing here is the previous site plan, what we showed you last month, and you'll notice that area of blue, you can see these ramps here and here. These were those larger 8% or more sloped ramps that required the guardrails and handrails. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So here you can see how it changed the curvature of the path. And in a moment, you can see the elevation and section, been able to play with the grade there to reduce the slope of those walkways up into the 88 units. And the slopes of those walkways are now less than 5%. So no handrail or guardrail is required anymore. Okay, we can go to the next slide. And I printed these out because this is really hard to see. So I hope I brought enough. I should have anticipated more of you would be here. We could pass those around. It should be easier to see on the paper, but again, this is the previous design, what we submitted to you all, what we went over last month in September. We had those 2 railing options for the back of building 33. It's really just those 2 units where that 8% slope was, where you have, and we presented that kind of that gridded mesh design, as well as the horizontal railing type, and we gave you a couple different types of materials. So that's just what the previous design was like. We can go to the next slide.
Just to add more, and I think, there was thank you, Mr. Wenzel, for pushing us to dig deep. But there was the issue that, the handrail, but then the guardrail is, you can see the gap there. The distance down requires a guardrail, which is, the goal here was, the point was, let's make this as visually minimal as possible. Both those are making it visually heavy. We looked at ways to make it lighter, but then Laura will go to the next slide.
We've eliminated the need for it entirely, which should, allow them to gracefully transition to the accessible units without having that those railings in front of the units there. So this is the revised proposed design. You can see on the left is the elevation. Got a person there walking up to those 2 units on the back of building 33. That slope kind of changes from 4% to 2% going up there. No railing required. And then on the right, there's the section 2. So you can see how this looks in section 3. Next slide. And then again, the perspectives that we showed you, these are the ones we showed you last month with the 2 railing designs, that mesh design and that more horizontal railing design. Next slide. And here's those perspectives updated with the new slope sidewalks. Next slide. right, and then I think what more of the discussion will be tonight will be about the canopies. Here's an image, you've seen this many times, but it kind of shows you the two options, 1 and 2. The option on the left here, this is the more modern option 1. And then this option on the right here, the sloped canopy was the more traditional option 2, which I'll remind you was the option that you all preferred in that phase 1 renovation project. Next slide. And then here's the elevation and section for option 1, a more modern design. And we can come back to these as we go through the discussion. I'll just kind of roll through them so we can get to the comments you all have. Next slide. This is the more traditional option 2. The applicant team agreed with historic preservation staff. This is the preferred option here. This is in phase 1 of Barcroft. The first phase to be constructed. These entrance types are more ornate and traditional. We think this option 2 design better fits in with this area. Next slide. And then this is an exhibit Sarah and her team put together, which I think is a good reference for the different types of entrances throughout Barcroft, both phase 1 and phase 2. So we can certainly come back to this if you'd like to see more, but I'll note for now, the 2 types of entrances we're seeing in this section, section 4, E and F, they're outlined in blue. You can see those are a little more ornate designs, and some of those you might see in the bottom as you get into phase 2 section of Barcroft. And interestingly, you can see the other types of canopies that do exist, I think, all in phase 2, which are there in type J, so now you can see what those actually look like, but we believe the option 2 canopy fits the best with the existing entrance types here in section 4. Next slide. And this was just a summary again of our application types. That form-based code use permit we submitted a couple months ago. We've got requests again for modification of those conservation area standards that we talked about for the rear penetrations, for the HVAC and heating units, as well as for the new doors with fiberglass windows, and for the basement window replacements that replace metal with vinyl dimension sustain. And then that second set of modifications to conservation area standards for the cladding wood trim and for the canopies, which will be requesting a waiver for both of those. So I know I talked fast, tried to get through all of that, but I want to get to the discussion and we can flip back and forth if you guys would like to see anything else. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So it matters before the board. In particular, sort of, what are anybody's feelings on the canopy type, the more modern traditional? And we had discussed sort of both at the last meetings, kind of want the board's opinion.
I don't mind either, but if the preference is for the more traditional, I support that.
Can you go back to the first slide where they're both categories?
Yeah, Greg, can you go back? Yeah, back.
Is there a height requirement for how high they need to be from level?
Yeah, there is a clearance requirement. Have Rodot or Antoine from Bostro, are you online?
Yes. Okay, I'll check. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Merdad.
Because I think I recall in the last meeting, we had 2 different types of doors. There was one that had, yes, the frame, but then there was a lower one that didn't have an arc over it. And,
The rear door, yeah.
right? So whatever canopy we choose would be the same one on that as well.
Let's put on the back.
Right,
I think
back.
so.
But I think what I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was, canopy was stapled to the top of the arch, which is kind of weird, but I'm also wondering how functional it is, if it's that high up. This is not a huge canopy, it's 30 inches.
Okay.
If it's elevated
On the
12 feet up, it's not doing anything, especially in driving rain. It's not even decorative at that point.
Yeah, I think the reason we went to that height is because of the ornate surrounds.
Right.
Right, so
No, I
that,
understand.
right. But no, here you got, yeah, that there's the function and the, we create the big canopy to get more, try to limit it to enhance the.
Right, and I think that on this one here where it is kind of squared off, you could definitely go with the traditional one, but if the traditional one gets in the way of expressing that arch one that you guys were showing earlier, not sure if it helps. In this one, I was hoping to see it's called modern, but to me, in a way, it does feel kind of like an extension of that plinth that is there, but here it's set on top of it. I'm not sure either of them would work with the other door type that you have, but if it's about consistency, then the one we've already approved makes sense.
Do you have a photo of the real one?
A photo, let's see. Greg, could you go to the existing photos in the backup slides? I think that's, you might have to reshare.
Yeah, sorry.
I think that's a good point on the height. I think that's why I wanted to include that exhibit of all the doors, because it might not be the right approach to have the same canopy design. Hopefully we don't even have to have them, but you saw the door surrounds differ quite a bit, so.
I don't think we have a photo. No, that was all the photos we had in these buildings. Yeah,
Sorry.
So just to clarify, that dozen and 15, whatever, all those doors are used through the whole complex.
It differs by section, so I'm sorry that Greg's doing this, but to go back to it, but so there's usually 2 types per section, and it kind of alternates between units.
It can be very hard to find a canopy that fits on all of those
All
door
of them.
types.
So some have like a pediment, others are arched, some have really decorative.
They're all very different.
Yeah.
And that's why we agree with staff's case-by-case analysis. We think that's more appropriate because we aren't, we're not coming forward under kind of one big omnibus renovation project. We're kind of going piecemeal throughout these as we apply for the Virginia housing tax credits for these units. So we do think a case-by-case approach is better suited here.
Agreed. So just so I can understand, whatever canopy we choose today, or not choose, but recommend today, would be the canopy that would be applied to all of the doors. I mean, this looks like it's the existing front doors, but does that mean that this canopy would also be applied to the existing back door?
So to clarify, it's doors, it's residential entrance doors, right, David, where the canopy requirement is. So it'd be all front entrances to the buildings as well as what, however many back, do we know how many back entrances there are on this?
I don't know, Greg, if you're able to pull it, because I think that was on the last week. I think last month we had.
So while I'm okay with either of them, I think it's kind of hard to evaluate what would be best for all of the doors. It's a different condition, like you said, it's conditional, considering we can't see that.
Oh, well, I think just so in this section, there are only, what, Sarah?
Those 2 types.
There's only
those
2 types.
Doors, yeah.
And then on the
Including
back.
the round one.
So the back doors.
And the back doors.
So there's no real door surround at the back doors. I don't know. This is just from the last presentation.
Yeah, Greg, can we go to the hidden slides and pull up the one for exterior entrances, which shows us existing back doors?
It does have like a segmental arch header,
Right,
but it doesn't have like the decorative surround
right.
that you see on the.
But you're right, we did discuss with the positioning of that, right?
Just how high up it's mounted, because
Right.
at that point, it's.
I don't think that would be at 12 feet though.
Yeah, because this is.
I've exaggerated,
Yeah.
it's not.
I know.
Okay, let's pull it up.
Sorry, Lauren,
Go down-
there,
Go down a few. Jump around, sorry. 25.
Well, those doors are the ADA entries? Or am I getting that mixed up?
So these are images of existing rear door entries right now in 30 and 32. So here we would have to put a canopy up here. And this is also meant to show you what we would be doing with those new ADA entry doors. We wouldn't have these windows off to the side, but we would replicate this design for the new ADA entrances on building 33.
canopy would go above the arch.
I believe so. Murdad or Antoine?
I think the slope
Yes,
would.
that's correct. And if you go into our latest perspective line drawing, you'll see that as well, or in the elevations. We implemented those canopies with
So I think maybe we print it out for you.
if you go to page
Go up
11,
more.
I believe.
Go to 11.
Which should be the last page of it.
Right, so you can see that the canopies,
Yeah, it should be the last page of the packet that you have.
So Lauren and David, can you just clarify that you're also going to apply for the waiver for this section as well?
Correct,
So
correct.
these might be exempt.
It might all be a moot point in the end,
Okay,
but.
just wanted to remind everybody
Yeah.
of that.
No, thank you, Cynthia. This all might be moot, but in the event, we're required to have them, we've got to go with one or the other. And it seems like option 2 is just a better fit here for this section. And then again, just only on residential entrances at the front, and then just a few at the back.
I have a question, and I apologize if you answered this last month, I was unable to attend. What is the material of the preferred option? Is it standing seam metal?
Murdad, Antoine, you want to take that?
yes, that's correct. That would be
yes, it is.
standing seam.
Did you guys say yes, standing seam metal?
Correct.
Is there any reason, so you've sought a waiver for all of them or none of them, right?
All of them.
Like the ADA accessible ones, I think the canopies that you proposed for those, I don't even know why you're seeking a waiver because it seems to me they're functional and they look fine, okay? The other ones are non-functional and don't go with the architecture, so can't we, have something that both fits and is functional? And I would be in favor of the waiver, but for these, especially for the purpose is to provides a canopy when it's raining, like so as you get your keys out, you're not standing in the rain. And I think you need. One question I have: would there be a gutter on the front of these so that you wouldn't have water dripping down on the front? If a small gutter.
Antoine, Murdad, I don't think we're adding gutters for the.
No, we
right?
didn't. No, there's no gutter in front of it, yes.
Okay, so you would have some dripping effect.
That's correct.
Probably,
Without
we
gutters.
didn't want to introduce another element to the front of these buildings,
Okay.
other than.
I think the point of the rear ADA, we'll take that's a trick, we may want to not request it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and also when they're considering this, they may think, it's either all or nothing. And I think if you were a little bit specific, you might, might look like you're trying to comply. And there's absolutely a reason to comply. If you're, especially on the ADA compliant units, you want to make it easier for people, and as long as they fit, go with it. But the others, I think, I'd be in favor of waivers. I don't see, they're just noise, okay? They don't belong there, they're functional, they're not functional, and they don't look, that's my comments, but you don't have any units with arches, do you, that you're not because they do make arch canopies too. You could put in arch canopies, but the one picture you showed of an arch, that's just.
Those are the
Show-
back entrances.
Of this building.
Of
There are,
buildings
there are
30.
some back
yeah.
entrances. How many do we, we're down to Antoine, do you know how many we have of those existing rear entrances? Might have been on that slide 25, Greg.
We don't have any, sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any arched entrances on the front of these buildings in section
Not this
4.
section, no.
See, on these, if you have something like that, you could put an arch canopy, it would look better than the straight canopy that we thought, either of the straight canopies. I don't think it would add that much cost.
That's helpful. Take that back, and we appreciate the note on keeping the ADA canopies, but not the other ones. We'll take a look at that as well.
your thoughts or comments?
I have a question. What's the rationale for the fiberglass doors?
That is a VHDA requirement, so all new doors and replacement doors must be insulated fiberglass or aluminum. They only allow solid wood doors when you have an interior entrance, and it's a weatherproofing item that they do require. We think is warranted here. I'll note too that it's another way to also differentiate new from old in this instance as well, since we're creating those new openings and adding new doors. And then it's on the rear entrance, so we think it's appropriate here.
Thank you.
Anything else? So that, I believe that what you need to move forward. And thanks again for your time here. We'll see you guys again.
See you again.
Yeah, we'll see you at the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for.
Are you doing all the phases, all the buildings over time?
What are you doing?
Yeah, right?
Over time. And I'm sure
TBD.
we'll be back talking to you about the overall plan, because, those call it 2/3 is going to be preserved, 2/3 will be redeveloped. We're having those discussions too, so
We're
that's,
still working with
Yeah.
staff
Yeah.
and we'll come out with the public eventually with the proposed redevelopment portion and conservation portion of Barcroft, and then what's, proposing to stay the same versus change. So far, we've just come to you with areas that are not anticipated to be redeveloped that are anticipated to remain inside the conservation area. So in the future, you'll probably be involved in for the upcoming discussion on the master finance development plan, and then for future new construction as well as renovation projects. So this will be long term.
so we'll see it
Yeah.
many times.
Thanks for your feedback. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work.
Gotta give credit where credit's due. Push this. Yeah, probably too.
What?
Let's see. Yeah, it's more lower income housing.
Next item, we have a COA and a marker review coming together. They'll require two separate votes, but we thought we'd bring them to you together since they are the same project. I've included the cover page, which I don't usually, just so that you have an idea of where in Williston this is. Then these are older photos from 2018 of the original burials in situ, including some of our lovely headstones. This was submitted to us, the original locations with their GPS sightings. This is what it looks like today. Moving quickly through so you can see the images, but and then that's the marker that we will review later. But Lauren, would you like to give a report on the replacement of the headstone?
All right. So again, the Robert Ball Senior Family Burial Ground is located in the Ralston neighborhood, which is residential and commercial area. A little bit of, because there's some new members here, so I'm just going to give a very brief summary of this site plan project. So back in 2016, the Ballston Station Housing Corporation proposed to redevelop the church building that was on the site for construction of an 8-story residential building that would incorporate a new church, on-site childcare, a preschool at the first 2 floors, mixed income housing component, with almost half committed as affordable housing, below grade parking for residents as well as the church. The applicant at that time was proposing also to, during the site plan process, there was multiple things that the county was negotiating with the applicant. And one of the things that is part of this project also, which we're very excited about, is the applicant has agreed to restore, maintain, display, and provide public access to the stained glass window that the county received from the demolition of the Abbey Mausoleum. And this window restoration project is almost complete, so we'll be having some things happen with that in a couple months. But as part of the site plan project for this, the county board approved it in 2017, And there was a lot of back and forth of what was going to happen with this burial ground. And in all of that discussion and back and forth, eventually part of that site plan project also involved this burial ground becoming a local historic district. So the project team came to us in August of 2021, presented their plans to the HLRB because before the construction could start, we needed them to remove the gravestones from the burial ground, as well as an existing marker, and that was all approved in a certificate of appropriateness for both those actions. So the proposal now is the current applicant, which is APA, which is the Arlington Partnership for Affordable Housing, along with their partners, wants to now have the permission to be able to reinstall those gravestones. We felt that the last COA did not address that, so we wanted them to come back and just bring that to the HLRB. So it is reinstalling 6 known gravestones and markers located in the local historic district. They have hired Worcester Eisenbrandt Incorporated, WEI, which is a historic building restoration contractor. They are the ones that removed it. They have been the ones that have been storing the markers, and now they will be the ones who will be putting it back. They are proposing their proposal that they have to reinstall. I'll include the photo documentation that you saw, as well as GPS locational data of where they're all supposed to be. Basically, they're not going to use heavy equipment to take them out of their boxes and put them back. And they're going to have about 2 or 3 people doing that heavy work. I was there to watch them take them away, so it's going to be interesting to have them put it back. They didn't have to go to the DRC for this. And basically, staff, for our recommendation is to approve this application. WEI is very, very experienced in doing this. They were really great with answering our questions when we were out there 2 years ago. And they have all the documentation that they need to be able to put the gravestones back. The one thing that is different is that when they removed the stones, they also took a stone that was not in the burial ground. It was inside the church. Somehow, there's a lot of back and forth of exactly where these headstones originally were. We don't know. We can't confirm. So where they were when they were removed is where we want them to be put back. But the question now is, where do we put this stone that had eventually been removed, put into the church? Where do we put it? And our recommendation is because it's a marker, it's like a footstone, and it has the initials FED, so we're assuming it's for Francis E. Dyer, which does have its own headstone. So we're basically saying, let's make that the footstone. That's probably what it was. Now we, again, can't really confirm exactly where that should be. I gave it a ballpark of 3 to 5 feet. Don't know how tall the person might have been, but figured that might be the best way to put it. And so that's really kind of our recommendation. And now it's to you all to kind of figure out what you think is okay.
Can I ask a semi-relevant question?
Sure.
Are there bodies there?
That's a good question.
I was going to ask the same thing. And did they find any others? I mean, if this was actually a grave, a grounds, they would have found many others.
So we've been trying to be very good stewards of this property, and the church and the developer have all been working with us to do the archaeological studies to see if there are other graves in the area where the construction was going to be. So they did a lot of archaeological monitoring. We looked at sensitive areas, and we did as much due diligence as possible. And basically where the building is, there's no graves, there's nothing. It's believed that if you looked at the marker language that we'll be looking at eventually, you'll see how what the burial ground kind of looked like, the areas. And so we think that this maybe graves were more over into the street. Don't know where those went, not sure. The church has records that say that some of the graves were dug up and part of those graves were in the church and then put back. Like, it's kind of all over the place. So the basic thing is that unless we come across a ton of money to be able to do DNA testing and further study of this area of the local historic district, which is a little over 500 square feet, like, we don't know where the graves are, whose graves it is. So really, this is kind of like I hate to say it, it's almost like a reminder or a remnant of what this burial ground kind of, not even what it was.
So in that 50 square feet,
I
did
don't
they not disturb that
They,
area?
they did
The
not,
construction?
they didn't have, no, that was basically all reinforced with like pillars and everything, and they left the soil where it was. They did not go inside or touch or anything of that local historic district, because if they did, they would have had to go to COA. But we made sure that they protected the area, we made sure that they had it fenced off. We limited how often the construction team could go inside, because they did have to do that at certain points to put up scaffolding and to be able to build a building around it. So that being said, this is what is kind of left of this burial ground.
Can you show where it is on that
There's
picture?
also, actually, there's a public speaker as well.
That is public speakers.
Yes, we do have public speakers. So that dirt area is burial ground.
Okay. So the only reason that these stones were removed is to protect them
Yes.
during construction?
Yes.
And did they use any ground sonar or any of those archaeological techniques to try and see if there were any hollows?
And
No, they don't have to, I'm just curious.
because they weren't disturbing anything,
Okay,
they didn't have to
so
do
what's there
that.
is there and what's
No,
not.
but WEI did, WEI
Sorry, can I
did
jump in?
do
We-
some. Scott,
Sorry,
oh,
Lauren,
hi
this is
Scott.
Josh Ochowski. Yeah, hey, thanks. Great summary of this long story here. We did do archaeological studies around that area. We did GPR of that area. That's kind of what set off where we should do the kind of preliminary excavation that we did. We didn't do excavations in that quote historical district, but we did it around that district so that we could make for certain that we wouldn't encounter human remains. So there was a lot of GPR done in that whole grass strip, even in that spot and further north where we did the original investigation back in 2021.
Yeah, and WEI also, when they were getting this all prepared and kind of getting the exact location of where the stones are and stuff, they did do a little bit of kind of probing to see if they needed to pull up any of like the rods or anything that were holding the stones into the ground. And I don't recall that they found anything.
My guess is it was like a lot of graveyards in the 1950s and 60s. As they expanded the roads, they just covered them over and moved the stones to the side.
There's been some shifting of some grades in many other instances, even some not too far from this location. So moving on. Yes, so we do have some speakers.
So yes, we have Bernie Byrne first, and then we'll have Mr. Wills afterwards. So Mr. Byrne also submitted a comment to you that you received, I have also printed, and then Lauren has some information about.
Kind of,
yeah. And so Mr. Byrne, are you on the line? Perfect.
Dr. Burt, does he have 3 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's see where you are.
Mr. Byrne, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. We still can't hear you.
We see you, you're muted. You have to unmute.
He's not muted.
Oh, you're not muted.
No, you're not muted on our end.
Maybe take your headphones off and unplug it.
There we
Dr. Byrne?
Still there.
He's back.
Oh, okay. You're still muted.
I think when you unplugged your headphones, we could hear.
So try and unplug your headphones and just talk regular. No. No. Do you want to leave the meeting and come back? That might help.
Or you can call in, and you don't need to use your video. You can call in by the phone line, and we can take your testimony like that.
Sorry, Dr. Byrne, we can't hear you. Okay.
In the meantime, while Mr. Byrne gets his sound, should we invite Mr. Wills to speak? Yes. Fabulous. Mr. Wills.
You guys just talk,
You can just come on over and take a seat.
Take a seat.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. I'm here today because I wanted to bring to the attention of this body a special GLUP amendment application that was filed with the county at the end of June regarding the Clarendon Presbyterian Church. The application, if you're not aware of it yet, should be coming up for Tier 1 review probably before the end of the year, although a date has not yet been set. This application is for a large residential structure, 6 stories or more, 92 plus units, 1 to 2 bedrooms, where the church currently sits. Naturally, this structure, this project, should it go through, would require that the existing church be raised completely and before the structure can go up. As most people in this room are probably aware, the Lion Village community is on the National Register of Historic Places. Application was put in 2002-ish, I believe, and accepted. There were very few contributing structures in that application. This church is among them. This church is a 1.5 story field stone structure with a slate roof, and it basically is the centerpiece of that end of Blind Village, the west end of Blind Village, in that residential neighborhood, zoned R5. The application is to change the existing code zone from R5 to R8, RA8 18, which would drastically change that neighborhood and the historic character to that end of Lion Village. The reason I'm coming here is because when it comes forward for review at the Tier 1 level, I believe, due to its historic nature and the fact that it is a contributing structure to the Lion Village National Register of Historic Places, that community, that this body, which clearly has an interest in being a part of that decision, because the Arlington County spent a lot of time getting that application moved forward along with residents of Lion Village. And so we think that it's important that this board be involved in that, and that we that I and others who I represent in Lion Village are asking for your help moving forward for a proposal that would remove this centerpiece of that end of the community and irrevocably change the character of that historic district. And so that's really all I have. Does anyone have questions for me?
What's the location and what church is it?
The location of the church is, the address is 1305 North Jackson Street. And the church basically sits at the confluence of North Jackson Street and North Irving Street. And in fact, the actual nave, the nave or the main structure basically sits right there in the center of that community. If you've never seen it, I would ask you to go by and take a look at it. It's diminutive, it's not a huge structure, but architecturally, I'm not an architect, I'm sure there are plenty, I can't swing a dead cat without hitting it in this meeting, but it's a beautiful structure, and I think it would be unwise to lose that when there are other locations in the county where a project like this, which is a good project, and we're totally in support, but we just don't think this is the right location.
Right, just to confirm, does the amendment that Denise proposes for upzoning the property?
Hi, this is Bernie Byrne. I'm available now on the phone.
Are we assuming that means to remove the church, or is that part of?
That's part of their
Hello?
application.
Just a minute,
Just
Dr.
a minute,
Byrne.
Dr. Byrne. Thank you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Do we want to discuss this now or at another time when it comes to us?
At another time, this is not an agenda item related to this particular topic. So there will
Thank
be
you.
opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Byrne, we can hear you now, and so if you'd like to speak.
Okay, I'm on the phone, by the way. The HALRB discussed this project and approved 3 related COAs during its August 18th, 2021 meeting. COA 21-16 permits the applicant to construct a fence that will surround the historic district. The historic district is not within the property's public easement. Therefore, members of the public have no right to enter the district. The applicant stated that the fence will contain a locked gate that the property owner will open only to maintenance personnel and to members of the Ball family. No one else will be able to enter the site. The project site plan does not address this issue. Before the construction began, people could read the inscriptions on the project on the preserved headstones only if they entered the historic site, which was not fenced at the time. Some stones were lying on the ground. Others were too far away from the sidewalk for the public to read. The applicant is proposing to replace the stones in the original locations. However, the public will not be able to read the inscription on the stones if you do that. Please, therefore, require the applicant to place the headstones in locations that are close to the fence. The public will otherwise simply not be able to read the descriptions on the stones. There might as well not be a historic district as far as the public is concerned. This will not affect the historic integrity of the site. Gravestones may have been moved during the construction of a new church in 1923. Alternatively, please amend one of the COAs to permit the public to enter the site with the permission of the land of the owner. The marker needs the following corrections. The captions for the map at the top right corner of the marker incorrectly shows that the word Cliff Clements in Clements Avenue had an apostrophe before the S. The applicant needs to correct this error, which is, as I say, the Clements Avenue has no S apostrophe in it. The marker's text states, in 1922, the Arlington County widened and straightened Clements Avenue on the east side of the burial grounds, resulting in the current orientation of North Stafford Street. However, the caption for that map states that the straightening occurred implies anyway, I'm not sure it states it, implies that it occurred in 1939. This was probably the date of the map, but the applicant needs to clarify this issue because the caption has to state when exactly the stones were placed there. The marker's text states near its end, by the early 20th century, visible gravestones were situated within a fenced area. However, the area was not fenced before the current construction began. The applicant therefore should delete that sentence or explain in the text that the fence was subsequently removed, because otherwise the people would just assume that read the song would assume, well, it was fenced all the time. Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say. Please talk about this when you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. We appreciate it. Okay, so we jumped around a little bit, but I did want to respond to Dr. Byrne concerning access. So the local historic district is going to have a fence around it. This body has approved that. They already have a COA, and there was concern that Dr. Byrne had about the public being able to have access. And he wanted confirmation about that. And I ended up contacting the county attorney's office and our real estate division, who currently right now is working on the easements, the public access easements that will be needed for this project, concerning people being able to see that Tiffany window, which will be in the church, making sure that the public can come during certain times at least to see that window, as well as being able to have access to the burial ground. And Dr. Byrne, I was able to confirm that pretty much anybody in the county, depending on their role, can have access to the burial ground. And there is a stipulation in the board report that was approved in 2017 that says it has to be every day of the week, 24 hours. Now, there is a question about, because you had asked questions about, do people need to have permission then? Like, do they have to ask to have access? Like, let's say from property management. And that's gonna have to be something that we will work out with the developer. My thought is that they might not even be allowed to have a lock on the burial ground, especially if you
Hey, Lauren.
have to give access 24 hours. Yes?
Hey, sorry, can I just jump in? Because that public easement was specific for the Tiffany window and the narthex area on the interior side of that area. To my knowledge, there's no public easement specifically for anybody to enter that burial ground. When we were originally looking at designing that, we were trying our best to create a ramp that would allow people to get access, but ultimately, because of the square footage, because of the ramp, because of the constricted basically frontage of that area, we wouldn't be able to provide ADA access. We wouldn't be ADA compliant. So that's where we came with the lock gate, specifically for maintenance purposes only.
Well, these are going to be the discussions we'll be having with real estate in the county attorney's office because we're reading it differently in the board report language. So specifically, condition 56, item C, as well as item E. So those will be things that we'll be working out. But Dr. Byrne, your comments, I will make sure that I take that up with the county attorney's office and the real estate division, because technically the HLRB does not have any authority to make a property owner give access to the local historic district. There's no thing that HLRB can do with that specific request. Also, your comments about the marker, because I know we're going to talk about that. These are all things that we will give to the developer and have them take a look at, because I think that those things that you suggested are something that they should look into.
All right, thank you. Before the board.
I have a couple of comments. Number one, I don't agree with, maybe, I hate to say it, I don't agree with Dr. Byrne's comments about putting the markers close to the sidewalk so that people can read them. I think it's much better, the staff's proposal, to put them where they were before, even if we don't know for sure. But I do think that on public access, I know we had the discussions about the putting the fence around, and there's maintenance and there's a problem with potentially homeless people sleeping there and all that. So I know the developer needs to have some control, and the fence was decided on. But to the applicant's comment that, well, since we can't provide ADA access, we can't allow people in there. That seems to me like the tail wagging the dog. I just don't think that's. I agree with you that you should have further discussions, and I'm not sure how you provide. Even if we don't have, I think it's better if the rest of the world doesn't have it, even if ADA access isn't able to be provided. And I hope we can work out something that that's not an excuse for not allowing the public to, go through that gate and look around if they want to. And also your comment about this is private property, so we can't require a private property owner to provide public access. But this was a site plan, okay? So I'm not sure where we are in the site plan and whether there are amendments are possible, but this is kind of quasi-public because it's a historic district and it's part of the site plan, and maybe we should have made that a condition of the site plan. But certainly when we were discussing this went on for several years. Some of us around the table remember all too well how we, really the original proposal was that they were going to, the church was granted that land by the Ball family on the condition that they maintained the graveyard. And that was in the condition in the original deed. And then once they decided they were going to move the graves out and kind of ignore them. And so it was really the HLRB and members of the historic preservation community in Arlington that said, look at the original deed. You have an obligation to the public to maintain this in some way. So this is what we, after many, many months of negotiation, this is where we came out. So I do think there's kind of a public aspect to this that, at the time the Ball family members were buried there, this wasn't an urban village. So they did, anyway, that's all I want to say.
Can you read what the board report said about that?
Yeah, so whenever there's a board report, there's basically all these conditions that the developer said that they will do in order to basically get certain permits and get through certain parts of the project. So that's what we're working through right now. And for the public use and access easements, it says that the public use and access easement areas shall be open to the public 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's pretty clear. It doesn't say anything about how they provide access, but it is what it is. But there's also specifically condition 56E talks about the public use and access easement for the historic district. And again, it says the developer agrees to grant a perpetual permanent public use and public access easement to the county board over, across, under, and through a portion of the parcel of the real property known as yada yada for public use and access as described in this condition, which is the Ball Public Access Easement. The Ball Public Access Easement shall permit the county board, its employees, designees, contractors, and agents, public at large, for the purpose of providing public use, including but not limited to pedestrian passage through and public use of. And that specifically identifies the square footage of the burial ground, as well as more detail about the access easement, what it shall have. And it basically says shall have full and free use of the Ball Public Access Easement for the purpose of viewing burial ground from the exterior of the historic district, while still providing protection. And it keeps going on to detail and detail.
The exterior, so it doesn't have to be open.
No, but we're giving a public access easement into it, and they can go in it, through it, around it, on top of it, below it, whatever. So these are the details that are going to be specified when they are writing and drafting, meaning our real estate division, for having the easements. And if they don't agree to it, then they don't get their CO.
Can I just ask one peripheral question?
Yes.
Are there any balls left?
Yes.
And have they been consulted on this?
They have, yes. Have I recently? No. But we did let them know when we were doing some of the archaeological monitoring, when they were getting everything protected, we let them know what was going on. So I have not notified them recently of the fact that they will be coming back. But it sounds like I should do that.
There have not been recent conversations, but there were family descendants who were involved during the site plan approval process back in 2017. That was.
Yes, so there are many different branches of the Bulls. This is one branch, like the Bull family burial ground is a different branch. And also, I think earliest graves were not purchase of land, they were purchase of a right to be interred. Whereas there are some graves and cemeteries since there are a right to land, you own that plot of land. I think they bought a right to be interred.
They no longer own this property.
Right. No, they deeded it to the church.
In the 20s, right?
Do they own the Ball family cemetery property?
Not the same.
Different branch.
Right, who owns that?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
One behind the VFW.
Oh, we still don't know that.
We don't know. We still don't know.
If you're interested in joining the Northern Virginia Cemetery Consortium meetings that I go to, we are talking about abandoned cemeteries and defining them at a state level right now, because there's no definition and no real regulation about opportunities for.
Great question, but
Yes.
not solved yet.
I have a question with respect to the Tiffany window and where it's located relative to the gravestone, where the gravestones will be put back.
Scott, are you still on? Do you want to give a little description of exactly where the window is going to be?
Yeah, there was probably a good shot where, can you circulate some of this photo on their construction?
Oh, that we.
Let's start right there, right there. Basically, yeah, right in the middle bay of that storefront. If you zoom in, there's like a smaller, shorter mullion in the middle, just above that, essentially. Yes, right in the middle.
Overlooking the great.
Overlooking.
Yep.
That was my recollection, but I'm pretty sure.
So the public will be able to have access to that during certain hours that the church is functioning. So it's not all the time, but I think, Scott, refresh my memory, it's been a couple of years. So people will be able to see it from the outside as well as go inside.
Yeah, the inside is definitely part of that access agreement. I think, like you said, it doesn't have to be church related, like functions, but I thought it was general, like standard hours during the day, like 9 to 5 or something, but don't quote me on that.
And there's also other stained glass windows that are not Tiffany, but are
That's
from,
right.
from the church, from the Central United Methodist Church, that from the original building is going to be incorporated into the new space where the congregation will be able to go and worship.
And you can also see other ones in MoGA, the Museum of Contemporary Art. They have some of them, and the Westover Library.
That is the other Tiffany windows that were in the, we're jumping around, the mausoleum. Arlington Mausoleum?
Abbey Mausoleum.
Darn it, Abbey Mausoleum. That has its own Wikipedia page if you want to take a look at it. It's an interesting building that got taken down, and so
We were able to take what, 12, there was, I don't even know how many windows now.
about a dozen.
I can still remember the smell of the formaldehyde.
The window that's going into, we feel that this is, well, this, we call it the Jesus window. It is of Jesus, and so it's been completely restored by a stained glass conservator who's out in Dunkirk, Maryland. He is waiting basically for the frames to be created out of Pittsburgh for it could then to eventually be installed in the next couple months. So I guess we had a lot of conversation, different angles. So again, the thing that would be helpful is input on that particular stone that needs to find a home somewhere in this local historic district. So if everybody feels comfortable with that location that I kind of proposed.
That makes sense.
So then we need a motion for that COA to put the stones back in the burial ground.
The stone's back in, okay.
Yes.
All right, cool. I'll give it a try.
How do you spell Abbey?
ABBEY.
So, all right. So I move that HLRB approve COA 21-17A, request to replace historic headstones. Okay, cool.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Okay,
Does it have to specifically mention that odd stone?
Well, I mean, it's all.
did you say all stones? Did you?
No.
It's
Oh.
the historic headstones.
All historic headstones? All historic, it's not a headstone, technically speaking.
All the existing gravestones?
Yeah, all existing graves.
Markers. Do we need to specify as well as is an agreement of staff's recommendation of where?
Where to place the, yeah.
Yeah.
Per
I
the
think it
staff's
should be more.
recommendation.
Yep. Per staff's recommendation, period. Because that'll be both, that should cover both the footstone as well as the other headstones.
Did you catch something?
Yeah, you want me to read it again?
Yeah.
Okay. I move that the HALRB approve COA 21-17A, request to replace all historic gravestones per staff's recommendation.
You still want a second?
Sure.
Okay, Mr. Aiken,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Fackler,
Yes.
Ms. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Handley,
Yes.
Mr. Laporte,
Yes.
Ms. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Meyer,
Yes.
Ms. Myers,
Yes.
Mr. Winchell,
Yes.
Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
Unanimous.
So now it's the
So now
marker.
the marker.
Marker.
That's the marker. And if, I did circulate more copies, so if anyone needs another.
So what's the status of the historic marker that was distributed for this burial ground?
We're talking about that now.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I picked up on Dr. Burns' comment with the apostrophe.
Is it open to discussion now, or is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have kind of two general concerns about the marker right now. The first is whether or not there's been any consideration given for accessibility, sort of color contrast, sizing of the font, different sizings of the font on here. To me, make it actually very difficult to read. I'd encourage the applicant to go back and maybe give some more consideration to accessibility. Even using the blue and green contrast, high contrast here, it's very difficult to read. And the second concern I actually had on this is there's a lot, it's extremely text heavy. It's very difficult to sort of focus on the key information for me. And I think it would be really nice to be able to have at least some of the text truncated or just even it broken up maybe a little bit by some of the images, if possible. Right now, it's very difficult to know exactly where to focus, and it just seems to be extremely text heavy. Just sort of just some general observations.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I would say is I had to like reread it a couple times to get to the part where it said like graves had been centered and then during, so the graves had been centered. So it sounds like at one point they were moved, and then during construction, the gravestones may have been moved or even lost. And I think we were all wondering where were the graves. So I would just be more clear that we don't know. We don't know where the graves are. Somehow I can't wordsmith it right now, but I think it should be more clear that it might not be where the graves are that they're looking at.
What about comments about the images? Do you all feel that they are helpful? There's too many? It's not enough?
I'm going to try not to over participate here, but I feel there's just way too many images here. There is a little bit of redundancy going on here. I think it would be good to maybe pick one of the plats and sort of expound upon it versus having, I think this is like 3 of the different plats and the marker maps. It's very difficult to know exactly what to focus on. And then the Sunday school image off to the side there is just kind of difficult to know exactly how it fits into the context of this particular marker, at least for me.
The gravestones.
They're shown in the picture.
Yeah, but it's off to the bottom right. The alignment for me, it's like, oh, okay, that's a picture, and then you have to like go and focus in on it. So if you could put it in some more prominence or find a different way to use it, I think could be particularly helpful.
Yeah, I think.
Maybe even a picture of the church, what it looked like before the church was demolished might be.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That showed the stones, if you could.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the picture you showed us was helpful.
Right.
I think too, the left picture that just shows the subdividing of the lots is maybe not that necessary.
I think I'm wondering, I like the idea of at least showing how it's really just a random square in the middle of a bunch of lots. And I feel like we've got the 1897 and the 1900. I'm wondering if maybe you just choose one or the other.
Yeah, I like the 1900 one. I think it shows the context really well.
Color.
Yeah, color.
Yeah,
Yeah.
1897, it's very a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if maybe we ask them to try and enlarge if possible. It's always hard with photographs how large they can make them, but maybe because it's, I don't know, I'm a sucker for old photos, but maybe have that be enlarged a bit, stick with the 1900 version of the map, and then maybe ask for a photo of the church before it was torn down that also shows what the markers looked like at the time.
For the 1900 one, maybe instead of enlarging it or making it smaller, it might be nice to show a little bit more context, just to place it. I know they'll know where they are because the marker's placed, but just to see what else is happening in that area at that time, it might be interesting.
One idea I had to sort of test the information, I don't know if it's possible or not, but this progression seems to be important in the way that they presented it, but maybe a timeline or something. I might be able to at least, get some of the text off. I just don't know how to do that.
That might be good for talking about the growth of Boston.
Yeah.
More of the timeline.
I mean, because I felt like the overall idea was that there's a progression through this, and if we could condense it, I think it could be a very good marker.
I mean, you could start with the 1865 survey.
Skip 1897, go to 1900. I think it'd be really nice to show the 22 church. The one that was taken down. And then, you'd have when it was a farm. when it was platted out by the Ball Sale, the church that was built on that piece, or maybe the Sunday school and the church in its modern picture before it was gone. And then you have a whole progression of what that lot was used for up until the building that you're in front of now. I don't really understand the one up here. What is this?
Well, I think it's showing the realignment of.
But I don't think that's very important.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think that's very confusing when you compare it to this.
It
these-
makes more sense at full scale, which
Okay.
you don't
You can't
get.
see the grave, you can't see the gravestones, they're the red.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see. They actually show the gravestones.
Right.
So we think that, like, for example, we think that when the road was realigned like that, it's probably when graves were just.
Right, so
probably-
I just sort of see that as useful for the historians.
Okay.
But the public will say,
Not for the general.
what is a curved road? You know, I don't get this. Because it's not curved in the 1900 picture. But in 1939, somehow it got curved to avoid the graves, I assume. That would be my guess. But anyway, I think the progression is wonderful, from a farm to, you know, to the family dividing it up and parceling it out, with part of it set aside for the church, and then the church goodbye. And then they're standing in front of the modern church. And then that gives you a little more room for text so that it doesn't have to be quite so densely. I mean, very few people, other than those of us whose wives yell at them in the museums, will stand there and read this whole thing. It's just an awful lot.
I think we looked at it as, let's provide more and reduce.
Right. Or just do little summaries at the top so that people can get the gist of it. And then those who want more can go deeper into it.
I do think that it's important to have a list of people who
I
are
agree.
buried there.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
I agree.
should stay.
I agree.
Are we all feeling comfortable also with the burial ground history? Like that seems like that's
Yeah, I like that.
pretty
I think
clear,
that's
but.
very good.
So it's good.
I don't know, sorry, I feel like I'm.
John, it's okay.
I feel like I'm being obnoxious tonight, but I don't know if you want to do like a call out box for the burial people or something to just, you know, because it's almost like it's a separate thing. Right now, it's kind of like right in the middle of it, but if you did it as like a call out box, some different color or something like that, like it shows the importance to it. But right now, it's like I was reading to the left and then I kind of got lost in the middle and then I went to the right again. But like if you did it as a call out, it's like, oh, okay, this is additional piece of information that's coming.
So burial ground history and burial ground during the growth of Ballston are the same thing. I mean, it's just different periods.
Well, if they're going to take more of like a timeline approach, then this part
Yeah,
is
that-
going to
So
be
you could actually,
all redone.
if you have the pictures in that row, you can put, you know, the histories that's relevant to those pictures in
You
easier
could put
type.
early history and later history or
Yeah.
something like that.
I was gonna say, whatever images get used, I mean, I can tell that these are like phone pictures, so getting like proper scans, if at all possible, I think would look a lot nicer too.
That being said, this is an awful lot of research and information, so I do want to commend whoever did all of this. I mean, I've reread it at least 3 times.
I also realized we did not ask for, we have some really good photographs of the time capsule that was found.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't.
Is that a
include
church
that.
with the burial capsule?
But it's associated with the church history. So, but when they demolished the church, we had a hunch, it's fun to be right, but we had a hunch that the,
Cornerstone.
thank you, the cornerstone might be a time capsule, but we weren't, and it was. And so there was a Bible, there was like a hymn book, there was a letter from 1924, there was a token, there was a couple other things on it, and it's in the church's hands because they own it. But we have some photos of us breaking into the cornerstone and showing what the remnants were. So that might be an interesting kind of image to include. So it sounds like, I think we've given a lot of direction. And Scott, are you representative tonight for the project, for all aspects of it right now? I know Ryan's not here.
Ryan's not here, but we do have Heather Crowell who crafted the narrative
Heather.
that everybody's looking at.
Hello. Heather, we can, I will contact you and we can kind of go over the suggestions. So do you feel
Yeah,
like
that's really good feedback.
we can continue, so we'll have to keep working. But it sounds like this was some good suggestions, all mostly from John. It's all John. Suggestions. So I will get with you on some of
Brilliant,
these
not
things.
just brilliant.
Heather, you did great with the research.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Heather.
So much interesting information.
course.
It's really hard.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Always
Yeah.
hard. And I think that there's something also to kind of what we heard from our DTR colleagues with their markers, how they try and keep it down to like 250 words, which is about half of what we're seeing here. So I think you're right. Us nerds like to read more, but maybe not the general public.
Well, you
wanna read
can
all of it.
arrange it in a way that you can have the general public read the beginning and then there's more.
Okay, so, there are 3 like textual markers that you're reviewing, which came
One
in a
in the
few
bigger
different
scale.
formats, one with a map in the back and one without. The
Um,
reason for this picture, which is hellish, is the making instead of printing things these fans. I know, you think so.
Break it already?
Okay, so some of them are. I do have some. Okay, great. So some of the ones that I gave you are like both sides are printed, some of them are only one-sided, but there, you should overall at least have 3 markers. Some of them came in different formats. Apologies if you don't.
I'm feeling deprived that I didn't get an origami copy.
Well, you're welcome to.
So if anyone needs more, I have them.
Okay.
Let me know.
Everyone have
That's
We
an
have
extra.
the investment building, the courthouse neighborhood, okay. The investment building over here. And courthouse neighborhood, and then the first federal savings and loan bank. So let me know if anyone needs investment.
Oh, can I also have the investment?
Thank you.
So, one thing I'm kind of curious to know about, hi Ken. That last one, maybe you'll get in a preview of what may go with this.
It made me very nervous. Sorry. I don't know what's gonna happen.
I was curious though, on a couple things, and I think we're still kind of curious to know what the location of where some of these markers may go. If there's been some progress on any of that, as well as the idea that we're trying
So
for.
yes, I can talk to both of those. In the email that I sent you, I believe I sent you a site plan with the 3 locations that I'm proposing highlighted. And also the cut sheet of the product. That would be the actual sign with sizes and stuff.
Yes, the cut sheets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like a number of different ones and you.
Right, there's different styles. You can do flat, you can do angled. And then there was also a site plan with the.
Yes, this one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You want me to?
Yeah.
Highlight that?
I obviously need it, sorry.
So I don't have a pointer with me, but obviously this is the first federal savings and loan with its canted corner. So I was thinking on
Which
that,
sheet is which? So.
right here, this is first federal savings and loan, or I guess this is left, what's left of it.
Which faces 14 or 15?
Faces you all.
Yeah, no, this is north.
Okay.
Plan north is well, technically that way, but yeah.
And so if you guys have been, because this is directly outside, it would be the one facing.
Right, so I'm proposing it on Yule Street on the corner. These are gonna be seated patios for the proposed new uses, and this is a pedestrian walk, right?
Yes.
So it's not gonna be a through street anymore. So there will be places for people to stop and look at it. While we're on it, I can talk to you about the ghost sign. I did a little bit more research into it, and there are 2 issues with it. One, the developer has been having a very difficult time with the work they're doing in the crosswalk already. And so to add another something into the crosswalk, he's very hesitant. And then when I was further looking into it, I
think you need to be even further away to get the perspective right, or else the sign would be really huge. Because you're not that far away from the building in that median, and we need the go sign to be big enough to show the third floor, right? That would be what we were trying to achieve. So if this board wants Greystar or the developer to pursue it, you can vote on that and do that. And they can do sightline studies as to where that sign would best be located to show that perspective. But I think it would be actually all the way across the street.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Davis, can I clarify something? There were quite a few board members here tonight who weren't here last month when we were talking about this. So one of the ideas that staff suggested to the applicant was considering a different style sign, something that would be like an etched glass or an etched acrylic that could show kind of like a then and now type image. And so we had asked the applicant to research that a bit, and that's what Kim is referring to. And so we had asked them to study that a little bit as they're refining the concept for the designs. So I think what would be helpful from the board tonight is to know your preferences about the proposed locations of the signs, the proposed content, as well as proposed style, and anything else that you would like to comment on.
Are we still looking at 3 pieces?
Yes. Currently 3 panels are proposed.
But if we were to make them do, sorry, that's not the right word. There's a better word, but recommend some type of ghost sign, that would be
in place of the first federal savings and loan. This
say
would go
one-
away and it would be a ghost sign.
Well,
Or are you saying there would be an additional?
Ghost sign is
It's a
something
historic term for a sign that was painted onto something in its anyway. So actually we talk about a transparent like etching or engraving.
Yes. Right, but
just for the record.
the nature of those types of signs is that they're acrylic and clear, so they just don't have as much information. Obviously, we could do something below if that were requested.
But you don't own any
just more
land
expensive.
like across the street.
No.
This is,
No, so
the
we would
entire
have to-
site is on here. So it would have to be on maybe the county's land or something, but.
Even if we did it in the median neighborhood, Greystar doesn't own it.
So Kim, can you point out, since you were pointing the other 2 locations?
So the investment building, which used to be located here, is now on the corner. And so I propose this location here. This is for the investment building. Ideally, you would be able to, I tried to see if you could fit it here. I don't think it would work with the sidewalk, but we can talk to the planner about that if you want us to like relook at a new site. And then this would be Lawyers Row, because Lawyers Row, it actually was it was buildings all around the courthouse. And historically, the original courthouse was down here. And so this was the former subway. That would be considered one of the Lawyers Row. And then if you look at the Lawyers Row image we have here on the sign, all buildings down this street where the current jail is, which is when they all got torn down for that jail, that's Lawyers Row. So this sign faces this way. You can read it and look at the street where it was. I had originally thought about doing it up here, but then I was like, oh, you're kind of turning the wrong way. So this one is Lawyers Row and this one is investment, but open to discussion.
Okay, so that's helpful, thank you.
So if you look at the bottom of the map would be the car park across.
Exactly. This is the parking lot here. That was the historic courthouse. And this is the gym where most of the Lawyers Row buildings that were made were.
So similar to what you were talking about with the kind of engraved sign that we were thinking of over by the First Federal Loan Building, we would have to find a location. They only own this part of the property, and so if we were to propose those in other locations, we'll have to go onto public land, into the public right of way, which is not possible. It just means we need to.
Yeah, I mean, technically, I don't think they own the sidewalk. I think they're just they're redoing the sidewalk with the county and this whole master plan. So they have the ability to place these signs where they aren't in the public way. If we go to another sidewalk or site, that opens up new conversations.
So I'm curious, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, is it fine? If you don't mind, I don't have a pointer, but I'm looking, if you put it here, you're not gonna have the perspective. So
So could you put it here in the public right away? So that as you're looking at it, you just have to turn around and you could see behind you?
So that it's facing,
It would be, I think it would be facing the street because you want people walking on the sidewalk to see it, okay? So they're not gonna see it if you have it facing the street, so it would be, they'd have to turn around.
we can look at that. I don't know what, how much clearance you need, because this is all public right-of-way space, and so
Right.
that's supposed to be pedestrians walking, which is why I pulled it towards the tree box, because that's not where people are flowing through. So I can ask them about this location, but I don't think you could put it in here. I think that
No,
has to
I'm
remain.
not, that's not what because usually when you do these things, you want the people that, as they're reading it,
Oh,
have a
definitely.
perspective
Yeah.
of what they're looking at. If you put it over here, they're not gonna be able to see
Mhm.
what they, without,
Yeah.
you know, I just think, anyway. And also on this one here, is that Lawyers Row to me was this row. of
Yep,
buildings
that's so
down
that
here.
if you're
Okay.
standing here looking at it, you'll be looking at Lawyers Row.
I
And then
have a
there were
vague
some
recollection,
here.
But would it be possible, does this have to go on your property? Could you put this one over on this?
That is,
That would be.
that would be
That's
new
fine.
conversation.
We have to figure that out.
Yeah,
Okay, well, so.
that's a
I
county.
also think that this would be easier to connect two of them together to,
Mhm.
so it'd be better.
If it's county right of way, that makes it a little bit easier, but we would have to figure out who owns what and where. In terms of sidewalks and medians and all that stuff.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I'm sorry, with the Lawyers Row, it's actually facing Lawyers Row, so you could like read the sign, interpret it.
Well, I mean, Lawyers Row, it wasn't just one row.
Yeah.
It was groups of buildings that surrounded the courthouse that the lawyers and the clerks and everyone worked at. They were very low scale next to this massive courthouse. So, you know, I think it's over time become that this was the famous Lawyers Row, but like in the research that we've done, there were tons of buildings surrounding the courthouse that have since been gone. The last really remaining one that was that low scale, homey feel was the subway that was demolished for this project.
Yeah. And while it's not as exciting, maybe potentially we could do the etching of Lawyers Row, looking at Lawyers Row from that location there. If you're standing there looking towards there, could you get an etching for that one? And the buildings aren't super exciting, but that you're at the right location maybe.
I mean, if that's the direction, that wasn't part of the conversation last time, but yeah, I mean, we would have to really look at etchings, we would have to first okay a spot and then do sightline studies to see if it makes sense.
Just so I can understand, are you saying that this lower one, looking at Lawyers Road that way?
Yeah, that way.
Perspective of the street?
Yeah, of the buildings on
Right.
buildings where the courthouse where the courthouse and jail are now. You could look across sort of catty corner across the street, sort of see all that if it was like done right. I mean, yeah, I don't know. And again, the buildings aren't super exciting, so maybe it's not the best use of time or money. But I thought I'd throw it out there because you could, yeah.
Out of curiosity, so is the etching based off of an existing image that we already have, or it's an artist
For
interpretation?
this.
If it were to be an etching of any of the buildings, to do the look through.
I think it would be an artist interpretation of the Lawyers Row buildings, because there are gaps that this picture at 83, some of them are already missing. You can see it was kind of a solid block in the 1959 Sanborn map, but for the first federal savings and loan, we could certainly use a drawing, or scaled, or an image. Yeah.
There's also the idea of maybe we don't do Lawyers Row, maybe we do the courthouse, which would be a bit more, I would think would be easier because it has more defined lines. If we were just to focus on just the main historic one that has the tower, maybe it's that. But it sounds kind of like, Kim, you're pointing to us that if we requested for Greystar to look into it, we would need to evaluate where would be the right perspectives. And then are those locations possible? And then we would have to decide what those would be.
Right, because the closer you get to the site, the bigger the sign is going to be.
We don't
So
want that.
a lot of,
We don't want that.
Yeah, a lot of ghost signs are in like old fields with like a half of a stone building, and so you're still 100 yards away before you get there, and you can see, oh, this is what you looked like before you walk up to the ruin. So with a courthouse, that's gonna be pretty far away for that perspective to work in a fairly dense area. So I'm not certain that would work. The First Federal Savings and Loan is only a 3-story building, so I think the perspective we could see if we could make it work catty corner across the street. But yeah, sightline would need to be studied to see how big that sign would be.
I think another point I just mentioned, what I've seen about the transparent signs is that it's helpful to align it with something that's existing.
Yeah, to have like a
So,
ruin.
Yeah, have a ruin is easy, but a lot of these have been changed.
Yeah, it would work with this one because you
That
could
one.
show that it had, you know, you could draw that 3rd story.
That one, I love the idea of lawyers row, but it's changed so much that underneath the street.
Well, you wouldn't, you would have the buildings etched up against the jail. You would have no
Yeah.
fabric to tie it to. So like the placement isn't as important for that one, but the perspective is for to make it look. Yeah, like really cool. They're very cool. They're just hard to do in densely like closer cities.
Sounds like more traditional markers are probably more suited to the site.
I think it would be this end, I guess that would be an extra, if we were hoping to do additional, because these are like the basics, certainly we will use. And that would be like a lovely opportunity as well.
Maybe some of our Civil War sites, we ever had one of those. Well, we haven't, this is like a wish list. Kim kind of got thrown into it a little bit, but I think we kind of thought that here's a proposal that we're thinking, so we can kind of narrow it down a bit. There's so many options. The whole point of these types of engravings are for buildings that are no longer there. We do at least have remnants of the investment building and the First Federal Loan building. So I am proposing we take the idea off of those. We focus more on the traditional marker concept that we have here. However, we are suggesting that maybe the HLRB requests we look into the idea of doing a ghost sign, I'm just going to reset that, ghost sign for Lawyers Row or the courthouse, or if you want both. Because those buildings are not here anymore. We do have some good images of those, and we could play around a bit more in the kind of like where the parking lot is right now, where we might be able to propose where those.
I mean, on this side of the parking lot gives you the perspective of the courthouse lot. That would look beautiful, and you could do a lovely engraving that would show that whole sweep, as long as the parking lot's there, right? Because that gives you an open view.
Well, there's a county park adjacent as well.
And wasn't Courthouse Road on that street that's now runs across from the parking lot? I always thought that was Lawyers.
Yes.
No, not, the jail's on that side, but over on this side.
They were all
Some of the
around.
building, yes.
Yeah,
They
so,
were
I
everywhere.
mean, you could, in that one image, you could show the courthouse and then a small row of brick buildings. It just gives the character of these, you know, campouts where the lawyers hung out. And then the tower and the courthouse that's gone. And I think that's our property, right? So it could easily go where that area is where people sit, and you can read that and you can see across the parking lot to the whole lot.
So I think that might narrow it down a bit with that idea.
Okay.
So,
So if we're putting a pin in Lawyers Row, that's not going to affect their permit, right?
well, that's a good thing to bring up. So this project, they have to have markers done for this project to receive their last certificate of occupancy. So I feel like we'll get farther along on these for us to be able to work with their timeline. Kim, do you have an idea? I
think
feel
the
like
final one is the next year. But I'd have to talk to Patrick again.
Yeah, we can.
But he wants them done sooner rather than.
No, sure. So I feel like we might be able to give good suggestions on these. We need to talk about these still. And let's see how the timing goes. If we're starting to really crunch up on their time, maybe we can come up with some type of understanding that if they commit to a ghost sign, that we can continue working on that, allow them to, because you are here, this is being developed, they're committed to getting this done. So they're not delayed with that last CO. So I just want to put that out there. So
Can I ask
that,
one other question? Where are they going to reinstall that concrete statue that they're restoring of the mother and child?
What they're
Isn't
having
that
a
on one of
lot
these
of
corners?
trouble with on the island. That's why Patrick does not want to touch the island.
Okay, so that's not in any of this.
That's not
no.
here.
But it's part of the project, but it's like up.
It's
here.
there, okay.
Yeah.
It's not that corner, right?
No,
No, it's still in a.
it's across, it's in the.
So we don't have to worry about that.
Right, and that's a public art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit separate from us.
Just out of curiosity, because I don't know too much about these ghost signs, how burdensome is it to develop these types of markers?
They're definitely more expensive. The more durable ones are far more expensive. So that's obviously what we were trying to aim for. But I haven't really priced it out right now.
Do we have a ballpark? Just out of curiosity.
It probably
The
depends
answer's
on
no.
size.
No, I wouldn't feel comfortable giving a number to it.
It's okay.
No, that's fine, sorry.
They're really, really cool, especially if the building that is being depicted is like a really neat building. Like they have them in New Mexico in these little pueblos that are ruins now. They have exactly those kinds of signs, and they're really, really moving and neat because you see what was there. I'm not sure I get the same view, you know, of looking at these prosaic Lawyers Row buildings.
Right.
I mean, they're like,
It's not like the
Here,
Forum at Rome.
Like even if we do, for example, First Federal Savings and Loan is make it do with the distance in the category, you're gonna have people and cars and trucks and trees and all of that stuff in the road. When you're in New Mexico, it's like, oh, you're out in the desert. This was the view, this was there. Lawyers Row, I would have to like remind myself how many trees are in front of that jail and look at the other views people were
We had
talking about.
discussed, when we were doing the 60th anniversary of the desegregation of the lunch counters, we had talked about maybe doing that for some of the lost lunch counters in the pharmacies and the soda fountains, because those would have been like some really nice footprints. Certainly, it's an idea we've been thinking about a while. I don't know if you guys have seen the 1994 Michael J. Fox film, For Love and Money, also called The Concierge. That's where the concept first emerged. I really highly recommend it. But it is like a very cool concept. I'll send you the clip. But yes, I think there are absolutely opportunities for us to at least start investigating this.
I guess the only reason I was asking the question is that would pursuing this slow things down a lot for you in terms of developing?
That's a question about whether or not they can get their COO without one sign finished. I don't know that we could do the ghost sign immediately. I also don't know what the legal obligations are for them in terms of budget for the 3 signs. If they can say, we agreed to 3 signs, but they weren't supposed to be over $50,000. So I don't know the answer to that.
So the conditions in the site plan says that they can spend up to $75,000 on markers, which was kind of like, wow, that's a crazy number usually for markers. So, but you're right, like.
That also includes our fee though for doing it. Like, it's not just the physical markers, it's everything else around it, yeah.
You're doing this for free. No,
Not this time.
no, that's true. So yes, there is something where they could state that it's going over that amount, like that, and therefore then we wouldn't be able to request it. We would have to really narrow down how many presents we'd like to have this holiday. So the other thing too is, I don't want to brag the power I have, but I'm the person that says they have met that condition to the person who is checking all these off. So that may run us at risk if I say they have met that condition and they didn't finish the engraver's letting the ghost sign, then that could be an issue. But I also feel that there's a partnership and a commitment that has been made so far. I feel like they would finish the project. But we're not there yet. So, okay. So I think, if anything, I feel like the ghost sign concept, I think we would like to explore it.
Okay. And I like really try and price it. 1 or 2. Okay.
As well as, so we can kind of get an idea of, I don't know, maybe we can't get one that shows, I don't know, all of Lawyers Row and the courthouse, or is it just the courthouse or one of the other, that kind of thing. So I think we do want to explore that. Okay, see how they react. We'll figure it out from there. Okay, so now we should talk about these.
Yes, so I think if the commission could give Kim some general comments, assuming we're going to have 3 markers with text, if the etched variety ends up not being possible, we have the potential for 3 interpretive signs. And so there's a few different versions. There's some with a map in the background. There's some with a plain background. So I think any comments you could offer on content, organization, images, that would be helpful.
And the only other difference that I would say is for the courthouse neighborhood. And by the way, all of this language is the language that was approved at the last meeting with the edits provided by one of the commissioners. And the courthouse neighborhood, there's 4 different versions. One just has less text because I felt like the all text version was just a little too text heavy. I think in general, these are a little text heavy. And then I heard you say that also on the last one, so now I'm really nervous to say that, but open to any suggestions.
I agree with that. They're very textbook.
Yeah.
Like,
but it was the same, Lauren and I had the same approach that she mentioned earlier, is that we're bringing it all to you and you guys tell us what you want eliminated.
Why don't we focus on the courthouse neighborhood and Lawyers Row one first?
I like the underlay, but I wonder if we can turn the opacity of it down a little bit, just so the words pop. And then the bottom paragraph on the left side, it looks like some of the spacing, and I know it's because it's equally justified on the sides. Some of the words kind of bleed together. So I don't know if there's a way to add some extra spaces to bump.
Yeah, it's because it's
like I see why.
Design layout. Yeah, I tried to mess with it. I'll see if I can mess with it a little more. I wanted to keep the distance between the 3 columns the same, but I can mess with that.
I have the same struggle in InDesign where it decides how many words it's going to put on and sometimes makes it look like there's no space.
Yeah,
So you have to enter and then suddenly it's like left adjusting it and it messed up.
Yeah, and when I do InDesign, I have all characters, so there are spaces there. They're just really small.
No, I think it's just the first line that jumps out at me, and because it's the first, it feels like it doesn't have any spaces, but I know it does.
Yeah, the map option is not my favorite just because it's harder for me to read it, but I don't really have trouble with the text. But the text organization, as far as I'm concerned, is actually pretty good when I'm reading, which is good. So.
It seems to me if you put together a single image, which shows, which is like an etching, like a drawing of a ghost, like they do of the Roman Forum and this and that, you see these bits and pieces that are here, here's what it looked like. And it's in perspective from across the parking lot. And you get all these buildings and you get a row of, in one picture, you get a row of the lawyers and you get these buildings. And then you can have sort of the text describing what's in that one image. Because fitting all this together in your mind is a difficult thing to do. And I think it's very hard for people to read this and understand what it is. But a single image that is from that perspective and then describing what used to be there, I think would be interesting. And you can use these beautiful photographs for the drawing. I mean, any artist could take these, given a perspective, and turn it into an image that incorporated them together. But it would be more expensive, probably.
I mean, the only thing about the ghost sign, and you were just saying with the Roman ruins, is that there are ruins there to put that piece together. And so this would just be a backdrop to a county jail.
With streets,
1990s.
within the streets and the spaces.
Yeah.
Put it in. That's right.
I was very confused by the final paragraph because it talks about the original wing of the building being demolished, but the original building was not a wing, it was the whole building, right? 1898 wing was demolished.
We can change that to portion.
What?
I mean,
It's sort of a wing.
it's just the verbiage because we talk about wings being added, but we can change that to saying the original 1898 building.
But then it says in 1961, a 7-story tower was built. Is that the one that's depicted in the picture, or is that the one that was demolished?
No, there was a
No.
modern,
Yeah.
there was like a 1960s modern building there. We have images of that, but it's not, we aren't showing it here.
I can add on the center top photo that this is pre that building. This is because this
I
is.
think a date on the center top photo. I
Well,
like-
the photo's undated, but I can say that it's pre that 1971 building. I don't, yeah, based on the cars, it's the 50s, but the photo itself is not dated.
So there's no picture here of the 1898.
No, the 1898 building is the one with the.
The one in the
tower.
center, the
Right,
tower.
no.
There's
Right
no
in the middle,
picture of the
the middle
1961.
Just
Okay.
this piece.
So maybe that's
So
something
that's
we,
pre-demolition.
so maybe we should consider
Pre-demolition.
an image of the 1961 section. I don't know.
I'm trying to think if I have one high res enough. I can look.
Yeah, I think that would be really neat. And I don't know, maybe then you could situate it so that like the courthouse neighborhood with the two courthouses is kind of in its own section, and then the two Lawyers Road depiction map and picture are really great together, but how
Well, I
are
like
these
these,
laid out?
I guess maybe it's not clear enough, but these two pictures, one on top of each other, this is Lawyers Row at the front, and then that's
Okay.
Lawyers Row at the back.
Yeah, okay,
So you can compare, I mean, I guess maybe I need to make that a little bit more clear in the captions, but like,
Yeah.
the building here with, you know, the gabled roof is the building there with the gabled roof that was facing directly at the courthouse.
Okay.
That's
If they were
Okay.
facing each other,
Yeah.
it might.
Yeah, maybe we
If
could
you
move
moved
those
the
around.
black and white over to where Sandboard is, and then move the
Okay.
Rose Row up, because they were facing each other, that may help.
It's also not a great picture of Lawyers Road because it's so recent, it has all these new buildings in it. I'm sure there are older pictures that don't have those high rises in it.
Well, we do have images, like, for example, like the building number 2, the Jesse building. We have like a close-up of just that facade. We have close-ups of it. I think we wanted to try and show a grouping instead of doing individual images of each one.
But there was also to recall, this is like more of a living memory, so a lot of people will recognize this. And it just sounds.
And does everybody,
Yeah.
I love Sanborn maps. I love seeing them, but do we feel that the public will appreciate it? Or
Yeah.
that it's helpful, this 1959 Sanborn insurance map on the top right?
I think the map is great. Okay.
I like it, yeah.
I really like
Yeah.
that.
I think the map.
Especially if you orient it better with the two pictures. I think that would be, now that you explain that, I think that's really cool.
I had a question about that too. It says that the 7-story tower was added in 61, but Sanborn is for 59, and the tower is the blue box behind the courthouse. Is that?
That's the tower,
Oh, it does say
right?
courthouse
Because the
tower.
pink is the original building. Right, Kim?
Yeah, I mean, I can, yes, the pink is the original, actually the blue is
Blue
the
at the
original courthouse tower.
It's 7 stories.
Or no, it's the tower 75 feet, yeah, it's the pink. And then, I mean, I can recheck the dates. That's the date on the Sanborn map from Library of Congress. They might have also just known it was happening. A lot of
Yeah,
these
they
maps,
just-
they just
It's like projection.
also take a 59 map and you can literally see they cut out and add things and
Yeah.
tape it, they glue it on. So maybe someone added that at a later date and then didn't update the date of the map, but. Or they knew it was being planned and put it on in 59
Yeah.
when they started construction.
Kim, I'm thinking that in the second paragraph, starting with before construction of the first courthouse, I feel like the meat of this discussion is all kind of going back and forth with lots of steps that it took in order for us to get the courthouse. And I almost wonder if we could consolidate, starting at as interest grew, and then with that sentence as well as the next sentence, I feel like we could combine those and take out a lot of that detail and just generalize it a bit more, like, you know, just basically saying that, you know, how this was a rural area and just how it grew, and the General Assembly that said, here is a courthouse, you know, something like that. So we might be able to simplify it. which would reduce a lot of text.
And I had a question for the group too. Wasn't the original name of it the Alexandria County Courthouse? Because we weren't known as Arlington until 1920s. So does anyone around the table know? Because I feel like that's probably another missing piece that we should clarify if we're going to be calling it.
Yeah, it must have been the Alexandria County Courthouse.
Correct. And it's confusing because I was thinking it would say Alexandria County. We have the reference in the text to Alexandria City. But I think we need to make the distinction that this most likely was the Alexandria County Courthouse. When it was built.
I also wonder if the third paragraph if we can generalize this too. I think that it's getting again to, here's why an addition was made, why a wing was made in 1939, why another one was done in 1936. I think it's basically, we're talking about.
Did you read my edited version of that text?
Sorry.
Well, I don't know if I did it in the right way, but I cut out a lot of words.
Oh,
Well, not a lot, but I cut out more words and the text is a font size bigger.
I only downloaded what was sent to me last week. When did you?
That was in the.
Oh, okay.
I think it might be this one.
Oh, okay. So then we.
So the one that doesn't have a
So can,
The modern one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So you're looking at a version that Lauren sent.
I'm sorry.
so the streamline.
There are two different versions. There are 4 different versions of the courthouse.
So the streamline has 4 paragraphs on the left?
Yes. The full text that was approved last time is the one with 3 paragraphs.
What's on the screen is what's most
Three what?
updated.
This is the more streamlined.
Which one?
Less
These are
words
neither of
and
those.
bigger font.
Yeah.
They're both versions have with the map and without the map.
And this one has 4 paragraphs.
This is less text, less words, yeah.
4 paragraphs is what I want.
Less words,
You have the 4?
But that's not what Lauren was.
Oh.
What
You have any
is
more of
the
the
most
4s?
They're all
Winter April.
right now.
I've never
I think this one with
the 4 paragraphs.
on the side.
Well, so what you approved last week is the 3 paragraphs, or last, however many weeks ago it was. I just thought it looked wordy, and so I was like, I'm gonna give them an option with less words. So it's the same content, except for a little bit more streamlined.
Okay.
Yeah, on the, I think it was Cynthia's comment about explaining the change in name of Alexandria County to, I think that's like introducing something that we don't really need to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to take away words instead of add more.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as long as it's not confusing, I don't think you have to tell that story in this. It's a nice story to tell, but maybe in another place. And, you know, we could talk about the Indians being on this land if we wanted, but, you know, you have to kind of cut down on the stories that you're telling. And I think that's not a story necessarily.
So you want.
People can disagree on that.
You don't want me to include the 1872 at all, or?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
The way it reads now.
But then just put it as Alexandria County instead of city.
I think it's just the first sentence on the first paragraph, say Arlington County, parentheses, then Alexandria's first courthouse, and then just talk about Arlington for the rest of it, because it's still within the perimeter of what we know as Arlington. It makes it historically accurate for referring to Alexandria, but we don't need to tell the story, but we can just be honest about what it is.
Just say like that name.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of a ton.
Yeah, we didn't even have it in there originally, and that was suggested, so we put it in, but we can try and change it.
Is there any other comments on this one? Because we want to make sure we give Kim feedback on the other 2. So what's next on this?
Okay, next one.
Investment building.
So Kim, I apologize, is this the version we have?
Yes.
Yeah, no, there's only one version of this one.
Okay, great.
Is this the one that used to be on the corner?
No, this is the
No.
one that used to be in the middle and now it's on the
Now
corner.
it's on the corner.
This is the one we
That's
moved.
right.
The facadectomy.
And Cynthia and I got confused because there's another building that looks so much like this that was in this area. We think probably was built by the same architect. And we were like, hey, we have another picture
It
of
was
the
like the
investment building.
twin at the investment building.
We're like, no, that's not it.
But
So
it
anyways, that's it.
Subtly different, and it said police headquarters on it. So it was someplace else in the courthouse complex. Kim, I had a question. Is there a photo that you have that shows the investment building in its original location, but shows more of the rest of the block, so it captures the Jerry Subs that was on the corner?
Yeah, I'm sure I have that from when we surveyed back in the day.
Because I'm wondering if that would be a better view of that whole streetscape. My eye is drawn to the fence and like the parking lot. I was wondering if you had a shot that was a little bit farther down, that still included all the investment building, but captured to the end of the block.
Do you want the investment building just the facade, or you like the
I like the
west
whole,
facade,
I like
west
the whole
elevation?
thing if we can include it, but I just wish we could start it, almost
Okay.
like move that to the left corner of the image and then show us what's left on the rest of that block, because that's all changed now. So that would really show the before.
I think after looking at this, I prefer the version without the map in the background. I think it's easier to, the map is kind of cool, but I think it's probably easier for most people to read.
I was gonna say the same thing. I do like this light gray contrast or something. I think that's kind of helpful too.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a sentence in the first paragraph where it says, "The investment building encompasses the modern aesthetic seen in many commercial buildings in Arlington." But then on the other one, savings and loan, it says, "The international style, which is rare in the colonial revival dominated Arlington County." It kind of cut, is it rare?
I
or
think
is
we
it
were
common?
saying that colonial revival is rare.
No, you're
Yeah.
talking about the international style. One says it's rare and the other says it's expressed on many commercial buildings.
But there's modern aesthetic, but then there's international style. And we don't have many international style.
But they're both characterized as international style.
Yeah, I think that might have gotten mixed up when we were switching these around, Lauren.
Oh, okay.
I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah.
I'm not
No,
trying to
okay,
argue.
no, that's good.
It says what it
We're
says.
still friends.
I think the investment building is meant to say aesthetic seen on many commercial buildings in the 1940s and 50s. That's supposed to highlight the United States embrace of the international style. And then the First Federal Savings and Loan is saying, we don't have that many. Here's one of them. That was a mistake on our part. So it's supposed to read the aesthetic seen on many commercial buildings from the 1940s and 1950s. Not specifically Arlington, but nationally.
So no in Arlington.
This is a minor thing, but this white rectangle, is there any other color or anything else that would make it kind of easier to see what you're really pointing in on? It looks like it's really kind of narrow around the.
We can try a black dotted line. I know you highlighted earlier ADA standards. A lot of colors don't meet ADA standards anymore, so black and white are normally what we use when we do public documents. But I can try a black dotted line.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's the point, but like it's cutting off that two and everything else. Is that exactly around what, it looks kind of tight around there? It's hard for me to see.
Yeah, the 2 is just the property line.
Okay.
And if we go above the 2, you might get another building. And then the reason why it's not, the map is kind of, I'll draw it right to the property line. I just didn't want to cover the ends of the building.
No, it's okay. I might just be a misunderstanding. That's why I was asking.
This isn't very important either. I don't really like the excessive use of articles and like, I think, why don't you just say investment building rather than reinvestment? To me, it sounds kind of pretentious. I know it's the investment building, but the investment building sounds like, people use that in these kinds of things all the time. I just, as a stylistic matter, I don't like it. And then right in the middle, you talk about the international style. When you've talked about it before, you've capitalized the style, and so I think you need uppercase style here, lowercase. And then in the second part, this part about the second paragraph, it says architects, preservationists, builders, and masons work together to develop preservation plan to document and dismantle buildings, historic facades that involve just reconstruction of new. To me, that's like too much detail, and it's like patting ourselves on the back rather than, it's not really the story that, we're telling our own story here, not the story of, I mean, I just think it's
That's my influence.
I know, but people like to feel that they're important, okay? And so, but you have to look.
I think the point of it wasn't to talk about how important it was, but more to how many people had to be involved to get this building down and put back up.
And I think to explain to the public too, who's not familiar, that this is part of the historic building. And there was a process to make sure that it got rebuilt in a different location, but not everyone's going to understand that looking at this building if they've never seen it before. So it wasn't to congratulate our involvement. It's more to explain the complicated process that led to.
I know, but I think
the facade.
This whole thing is about us, not about history. And this looked like we're trying to brag about our own accomplishment rather than.
Well, it wouldn't have been preserved but for all this effort.
That's kind of, I think, where I was trying to go with it, is that I wanted it to be, I thought that it would be an opportunity for us to talk about how it is a preservation effort to do it. So I think that's why, but you're right, it's going away from our traditional focus just on the history.
Right, this is a historic marker. I mean, I think this is all fine if you're having a rededication of the building, having somebody get up there talking about all the people who worked on it. We really thank them, but this type of thing doesn't really belong in a historic marker. The story should be told in a different place, not, because this is supposed to be for posterity, people, they're gonna say, oh, these people were just bragging about all the work they put in, not trying to document. I mean, not that it's not good work, but it's not the right place to tell this story.
I think if you change the emphasis a little bit to what process was required to preserve it, even though it had been left in its original location, this would have been necessary. But instead of just focusing on, okay, it was preserved, and this is the process by which it was preserved, and we can still appreciate it today.
No, I think it's important to tell that, the facade was moved, okay? It's very important, okay?
No, and I think it makes, and also the fact that they're not local historic districts. I think, because we even had a part where we were gonna talk about the HRI on here, and we ended up taking it out and wanting to kind of highlight, these aren't local historic districts. They're not in a National Register nomination, historic district. But wanting to kind of explain, because 5 years, 10 years from now, 5 years from here, people aren't gonna know that this, if we don't point it out, they're not gonna know that this was an effort of, like we said, multiple people. Even using the word preservation is a little, I'm still kind of going back and forth that maybe that's the right word to use.
I don't see it as preservation.
Because this is really,
I never did.
Because it is not what we see traditionally when we're talking about historic preservation. This is more of an urban design concept.
Right.
That we have embraced in Arlington County and tried to do better, is really neat. So maybe that's something also we kind of think about, is what that title should be. Maybe it's not preservation, but maybe it's urban design. Sounds a little too technical, but
Kim, we can work together
Yeah,
and finesse that section together.
Okay.
This one or the next one?
Any other thoughts? We have one more.
You're always welcome to send us notes.
Said this facade
Enjoy yourself,
Yes.
making notes at home. You're welcome to email them to us. Here we are. Last one, first one was saving that room.
On the note of talking about the HRI, I think maybe that first paragraph, kind of preservation and adaptability should just be cut. Is that, just mentioning the HRI on these signs, just consider.
I have the same thought.
And Kim, for the Sanborn map on this one, is it possible to zoom in just so it's this block? I find it's hard to read. I know there's some value in providing the neighborhood context, but I think it's distracting. I think we need to focus in on the block that we're talking about.
Yeah, I felt that was one of my comments.
This is a minor thing, but I like the light gray contrasting these on the other one. You could do that. because I think
Okay,
it
yeah,
helps.
that's why I gave options in the different signs.
Yeah, and I'm gonna contradict myself, but I think the white actually works a little better.
Oh, okay.
So, now that
In this one at least, yeah.
Well, no, I think my eyes are playing tricks. Stop talking about color.
Yeah, I like the advertisement with the undated photo.
I have a question. Is adaptive reuse the right word for this? I don't really see this.
I bow to whatever the board, professionally, I would call it a facadectomy. I know that's not a word, we don't want to put in a permanent
No.
sign, so
You know,
I think it's up for debate.
I think of adaptive reuse as like taking a church and changing it into apartments or something like this.
Yes, that's the
think-
more traditional definition.
Yes,
Well, it was a coffee shop, isn't it?
but this is going to be residential when it's finished, right?
No, this will have commercial space in it.
so I don't even think it is adaptive reuse. If you're, it's always been commercial. How is it adaptive reuse?
I agree, I would call it a facadectomy.
So,
Especially because there's a huge tower now coming out of the top of it.
so when you read these two together, the message that comes across really is that Arlington County cares about its historic periods of building. And one historic period was international, and there's not a lot here, but it was mostly commercial, and the community felt it was important to save some examples of that. In this block, you will see two examples of saved internationalist facades. Here's their history, very briefly. I mean, they were just commercial buildings. They weren't anything very special, except that they were of this design style, which is beautiful and aesthetically pleasing to people who really like that style. And it's really a single kind of picture. We've saved the two significant pieces of this kind of architecture, at least the facades of it, in these buildings, so that you can see, it's sort of a one story. It's a story of how it fits into the fabric of the county, and then how it's been saved and kind of conserved. The facades have been conserved in this building, so you can appreciate that style and where it came from and why it was important. And that's what I mean. There's a bigger story here than just talking about a bank and an investment building. I think those are unimportant issues. What we're really trying to say is the county cares about keeping the different periods so you can see them. And here's two examples that we kept.
Sort of not even factually accurate.
Well, why?
It's really the developer's idea to do this.
Okay, well, maybe not the county, but the developer. Give the developer credit.
I think this one, since it's still on the same site, what you said is more true of this. There was community support for keeping this building on the same corner and saving the facade. The other one, I think it was the developer's idea to move the building from the middle of the block to the end, because that's the look they wanted to.
The developer would have torn down these buildings
Right.
in a second. They wanted to. Your sector plan said that they had to look at saving the facades. And so they kept one on the corner and they said, we'll keep the other one, but we're gonna move it. And everyone agreed.
That was the compromise.
So that's,
Yeah,
that's
that was the compromise. But to say that the developer did this on their own is disingenuous. It was not their
I
idea.
think it's, I mean, the story is a wonderful story. And we should tell it as that story, because that's what people will care about, not that it was a federal bank.
Do you think then it should
Maybe
have
it's
two
one
separate
side
markers?
If you've got a place where you could see both of these,
No, they're
Then
literally
I
on
think-
opposite ends of the.
yeah, then I think maybe two different signs, but each one would just have a little piece on what that building had been.
Okay.
But a bigger piece on why they were kept. They weren't significant businesses. They were kept because they were significant architecture in this county, which has very little of this. And that's the story that we're trying to tell, right? And that we could work with the developer, right? That the county and the developer, of course, would always tear it down. We won't say that. But the county and the developer work together to keep this example, this rare example in Arlington of this particular important style. And it's been incorporated into this new building and they paid attention and blah, blah, blah.
So I think if we're focusing more on the compromise that was done in all different parties and why. And I think we were trying to do that in these two because we knew that they needed to be on the opposite sides of the block, but not repeating.
But I just want to circle it back because it's a little different than what you suggested. That's not the history of the buildings. That's the history of the development. So are we okay with that?
I think that's part of the history of the buildings now. From here on, it's part of the history of why they still are there. The developers worked with the county, saved these pieces. They're just fragments, agreed. They're just the facades. But they are, in those buildings when they were building them, the facades were pretty much all that was really very interesting because usually they were just brick backgrounds. So
I think that, at least personally, I think we came to a good result, okay? And
Agreed.
I think that somehow this ought to say that, I mean, I don't know if you have to say this is a compromise, but I think what we're getting is much better than what could have been, okay? From a historic preservation, historic preservation. I'll use the word historic preservation because I think it's not maybe technically correct, but I think we're better off.
It's a good story.
Yes, it's a good story.
It's a good story all the way around.
People who like history and architecture, I think we're in a better place than very well.
Well, it's also an important lesson that the public should know because they don't really care that much about what happened in these buildings. I mean, maybe they do, but I think the message that is worth conveying and trying to imprint on the public is that these buildings can be saved this way.
And the design is
takes-
important. Urban design is
And it
important.
takes time and effort, and, that's the reason it's still, at least the facade is still standing.
I
That
think it's
is-
an interesting.
It's a great story.
About like changing public history. Public history does not look the same in Arlington, which is a much more modern community than many across America. We're doing it differently. This is how it looks here. This is how we've chosen to continue to integrate our history into our changing developing community.
This is how we got to where we are.
So I think, obviously, Kim, you're obviously coming back. So I think,
One more thing.
oh yeah, sure.
The Sandmore map, it doesn't, that box is not around the correct.
Oh, did it?
I think it kind of misled
Sometimes
over.
when you print, it
Because like
moves.
the.
Doesn't look like it to me.
Because the courthouse is like. should be
I thought it was,
south.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was the site where they tore down all the little houses and put the
No,
buildings up.
it should be up here. I'm sorry, the image must have shifted.
Oh, I see, there's
Before I
the courthouse.
printed,
Old
before I
courthouse right
exported
there,
it.
yeah.
It's supposed to be shifted down. Apologies.
So
That is
Kim,
right.
For the layout of these images too, consider maybe putting them chronologically. I feel like the 2018 view should be the bottom one. Because
Okay.
that's what it looked like
And the
most
map in the
recently.
middle.
Maybe the map in the middle and then the undated photo up top.
Well, the question is whether or not I'm gonna continue editing this sign.
That-
Or am I doing a new sign that has one version focused on that, one sign that tells the story, and it has a blurb for the investment building, and then a second version that has a blurb for the first federal savings and loan, but they're telling the same story.
And maybe a third blurb that says this was done through a partnership between the Arlington County and the developer.
Well, that's the story I would be
Right,
telling.
that's
Yeah.
right.
I don't think that massive of a change has to be made. I think maybe,
It's a lot here.
I agree, maybe don't call it preservation, maybe come up with a much better title about compromise or incorporating a historic facade, modern development, something, but I actually like having them in front of the correct buildings, and having a little story about whatever we decide to call we were just doing.
I kind of do too. I agree.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
Another question about this clipping. It's hard for me to figure out, it may be that this was an advertisement for First Federal Savings and Loan. So did you clip out the name of it, or was it the text on the building more prominent?
I think the text on the building was more prominent when it was printed
That's what I
in the
thought.
before, but I would have to go back and look at the original ad that we pulled it from, but I'm sure we clipped just what was like a little box and a huge page of
Yeah, is
newspapers.
there a way when you copy it that you can sort of highlight that a little bit, so?
We can mess with it in Illustrator and try and make that a little stronger.
Photoshop, and this, it says open house tomorrow, and then it says first, and the name of the building should be more prominent.
Yeah, the name of the building wasn't printed on the ad, it was just on the picture.
Okay, but I think in the original ad it was prominent. Maybe not, maybe.
Well,
not.
the original ad probably was better, just high quality when it was printed, and who knows when the 54 newspaper was scanned.
Yeah, but that's why I think that some Photoshop might be in order.
Take it away, Lauren. All right, so we will meet. We will assist.
I'm on vacation next week, but I'm just going upstate, so if you want to meet next week, we can do that.
Do we want to meet next week? We'll figure it out. So, but we'll have a meeting to try and kind of assist with all of this feedback and how we can kind of play around more. Because I think that would be helpful and give Patrick reassurance that we will continue to work with his schedule.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't think he's particularly nervous. I just know he wanted to get the ball rolling.
We just get a ton, we're just getting a lot of COs for this project, and we keep wondering when we're getting the last one, and we don't want to approve it until this gets done, but if we're getting close onto the clock,
I will circle back with him on his schedule.
Okay. Thanks, Kim.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Future report, just not a whole lot of report, just want to thank everybody for making today's meeting. It was better attended than the last meeting, so I'm happy to see that, so appreciate that. Other than that, not too much to add, I don't think. I'll pass it over to staff report.
Okay. So really quickly, just wanted to give you an update on where we are with the update to the Historic and Cultural Resources Plan. So we took the request to advertise to the Planning Commission a few weeks ago. Thank you to Joan for representing HLRB and making a statement. That was very helpful. And this past Saturday on the 14th, the County Board agreed to advertise the official public hearing. The request to advertise stayed on the consent agenda, which was great news. And so we are in the final home stretch. We have 2 more public hearings. We're going to the Planning Commission in a few weeks, followed by the County Board adoption hearing. And I think we have our chair and vice chair on standby to help us with the HLRB representation for that. So we are so close. So thank you for bearing with us, and we will give you an update next month as well. And I wanted to mention, please, in your emails, I believe this week you got an email from Serena that has a very short questionnaire for you to fill out. It should take you less than 5 minutes. I think a few of you have filled it out. Some of you have not yet. It will just really help us understand what works well for you and not, and it will help us plan for the new year. So if you can take a few minutes to fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. And then lastly, not on the agenda, but we wanted to mention some great news about the Historic Preservation Fund. You've heard us talk about it for a while now, and the application period closed at the end of April. We received 19 really great applications, and we spent some time over the summer with our colleagues doing the scoring, doing the reviews of the projects, and we are proud to announce that 12 of those projects will be receiving funding. And the county released an official press release just last week. So if you haven't seen that, it should still be up on the main county page under the news. And want to thank Lauren for all of her hard work behind the scenes, working with all of the grantees. We waited so long on the press release because we needed to get all the grant agreements signed on the dotted line, finalized, all the scopes and everything, the budget's figured out. So do you want to give the board, Lauren, just maybe a little sampling of some of the types of projects that are going to get funded?
Sure. So we have a lot of different projects that some are involved in civic associations, for example, Dominion Hills. They are going to be doing their own kind of historic interpretation project where there's going to be 3 markers around where the Free Lothrop property is, and they're going to talk a little bit about that property. They want to talk a little bit about the Civil War history because of the possible archaeology link that was argued a lot by the public on that, and other forgotten history with those 3 markers. We weren't sure how it was going to work, but the fund also supported capital projects, and that was going to be a tall order for, let's say, an individual property owner to be able to reach, but we did end up having at least 2 individual property owners that will be receiving capital grants. They are local historic districts and they're protected, so they'll be doing some restoration works on their properties. One of them is in Maywood. The other is the Fravor House. We also have the Barcroft School.
You approved their roof.
Yes.
the green
roof. The Barcroft Community House, they also are getting the capital grants for the roof as well as repairing the sidings and painting. And all of these projects have a component that we really were looking for, where it was going to be telling the community about the projects. They're either going to be putting articles in their newsletters, they're going to be doing social media posts, some are going to be inviting students to come and see some of these projects, some are also going to be translating some of the history that they might be posting in a different language. Those were things that we were really kind of looking for. How can you tell people about your project and be successful with it? But there's also some other things such as more educational aspects. Some of you may have heard about the George Mason University project, where they're going to be really focusing on kind of the Black history, Black mobility in Arlington County, and really just kind of coming up with an entire listing of materials where you can research and stories you can get to. They're going to compile it all together into a software and have that be available for anybody to be able to use, which is amazing. Also thinking of what I'm really excited about is the John and Langston Civic Association. They're going to be trying to do a National Register nomination for the Halls Hill Highview Park neighborhood, so they're going to shoot for that effort. So we have some really fantastic projects. Just take a look at the press release. We'll also be putting a lot of that on our website, and we'll be coming up with some strategies on how we can keep the Historic Preservation Fund moving, because we're spending all of that money.
Every last penny.
All of it. And so we're hoping that these projects will be really, really great. People will see the benefit of it. It will keep trickling over, and that the county board will just have to keep filling that coffer. So.
That's great. That sounds really great. Is it possible to get into next year's budget still, or for another round, or?
Potentially.
Yeah.
More to come on that. We'll talk more.
So are you all exhausted? Do you want to wait a year?
No, we have until the end of June. Yes, we are exhausted for many reasons, the fund being one of them, but we have these 12 projects. Some of them have gotten started, some are just getting started, and so we are on track to try to get them all done by the end of June of next year. So we still have quite a bit of work to do in terms of grant administration for all of these. So
Do they have to be done in a year, or a certain timeline?
ideally, yes.
Yeah.
But they can request an extension, I imagine.
Yes.
Good work.
That's excellent. Really exciting. In the press release, I've seen it in the Arlington Now article, there were only those ones listed. Is there a complete list of the 12?
The press release that the county gave does
has
give
all
a description.
It has all
Yeah.
of them, okay.
Yeah.
The summary of each.
And if there's any that you see, or
I
that
think
you
for a
wanna know
future
about that's in your
meeting, it would be
neighborhood.
really nice to give as a document to this body, those little, just the abstract off of the 12, just so we could see them. Be interesting
Hopefully
to
we'll have
see.
them do some presentations maybe toward the end.
Yeah, be interesting.
And as things start to get finished too, we're thinking through some creative ways to promote all the projects individually as well as collectively. So there will be a lot more to learn on all of them.
That's wonderful.
And I've been attending a lot of other, like I was at the county board meeting with the Plan Like Boulevard plan, and so I've been to planning commission's meetings lately, and so there's been a lot of public comment for some of the different efforts going on in the county. And many of the people who are involved in some of these projects, when they're talking about their public comment, they are also highlighting that they received a grant. So a lot of them are very proud that they've gotten it, and they're letting them know about it. So that's good.
There's excitement about it.
What's the average size grant?
Well, everybody was able to get up to 25,000 for a non-capital grant, and the capital grants could be all the way up to 100,000. And most of the non-capital projects were around 25,000.
20, 25.
Yeah. There's a couple that were small. I think the smallest one we had was a $6,000 one.
So the total expenditure is?
300,000.
And all of the capital projects, the individuals, not only, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any horror story that might happen where somebody would do an improvement to their historic property, show that improvement, and then sell it to the developer and it get torn down. That's why we specifically were like, it has to be a local historic district or have an easement on it. And then we also wanted to have them commit, so we made the requirement of the 100% match. So most of those capital projects are around 50,000. So, but everybody has to do at least $25,000 to $50,000.
It sounds like you managed it really well.
Yeah, it is a perfect. It's a perfect program.
It's the best model ever.
The best one I've ever seen. So happy to answer any of the questions. If you want to know if there's any that are around your neighborhood or any projects that you're kind of curious to know about, let me know. And I know everybody would love to, some might even reach out to you to maybe help stream things along or be partners on, so.
So one last question, do any of the folks in the room, since we have almost everybody, does anyone know if they're not going to be here in person next month, November 15th? Okay. So we want to make sure we can have in-person forum.
And I have secret slides at the back end of this showing some of the haunted locations in Arlington because it's seasonal. We have no time. So I wrote a blog post for the library a few years ago. I'm going to send you the blog post you can read about ghosts and hauntings if you would like to go and see them. There's one at Wakefield. Wakefield High School.
We'll just go through them real quick and tell us what they are.
Okay, so there is a little girl at the Overley Pool. She died of typhoid in the early 1900s, and she haunts it. She's meant to be very friendly.
Even the new building?
Even the new building, yeah, the pool area.
The pool area.
This is Arlington Hall. There's a woman who is on her way to a party. She stops at a mirror and looks in the mirror to make sure her makeup looks good, and then she disappears down the stairs. This is the chapel at Arlington National Cemetery, and there's, again, apparently it's just women haunt things. There's a lady who's waiting for her soldier beau to come back from the war, and he's lying in state in the chapel. And then the Wakefield, apparently there are very playful ghosts there in the theatre, and they will turn the lights on and off, they will turn the music on and off. And it's meant to be good luck for a theatre to be haunted. But I'll send you everything. There's a few more different sites. And if you missed, the library had a little lecture about it.
I think
If you
they're
missed
having
that,
it. It already filled up. The library was sponsoring like an hour-long thing about haunted Arlington. Couldn't get in because it was already full.
if you know of any other streets I don't know about, let me know.
Happy Halloween.
And with that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I just first want to thank the staff for everything they've been doing.
Remarkable.
No, I